allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, everyone, welcome. Kathy, if you can do a roll call, please.
You got it. Sabin. Schreiber.
Here.
Bergbauer.
Here.
Galogli.
Here.
Deskin. Here. Lobes.
Here.
Bartleson. Here. Heretta.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right. Before we get to John and Ben, I was going to ask for liaison reports. Anybody got anything going on that they want to share?
Just really quickly, Lockport Love had their sponsor meeting today, which was fantastic. We also received a large donation from Seratoma today for a nice check to help out. And then also, Lockport Love will be selling online tickets now at the Roxy for It's a Wonderful Life. There's a 2 o'clock showing and a 5:30 showing in the first week in December. That's Sunday, so if you guys would like to come out, that would be great. Tickets end up being pretty affordable, $5 plus a small service fee online. Thank you.
All right. Anybody else?
Yes, I just want to reiterate, so Halloween is obviously over. Hopefully everyone took pictures and will still be submitting some more of their homes that they decorated. And also the fall decorations. And I know we're supposed to get snow and hopefully people will still decorate and be able to see their lovely decorations. So we hope that you'll continue to send in your homes.
All right.
Yep.
All right, is that everybody? You know, I forgot Ernest, our police chaplain's in the house. He was going to open us up in a prayer.
Please pray with me. Mighty Father, first we just want to say thank you. Thank you for all of your grace. Thank you for all of your mercy, Father God. Thank you for your love, Father. And we look to the hills from which our help come from, and our help come from you, Father. Your word said, in all thy ways acknowledge you, and you will direct our path. So we ask you for direction on tonight, Father God, to lead and guide us, Lord. In your Son's name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Ernest. All right. John and Ben, if you guys can meet me at the podium. Swing. Come on up. So this is John Kroners. He's one of the coaches for the golf team, and Ben, second year in a row, wins a state championship. That's just amazing. And I love golf, right? Yay! I don't love it because I play, because I don't. And in this job, everybody's asking to play golf. I always send Ben, right? He's the ringer. But I always love it because it's one of those sports I watch people that can play their whole lives, right? It's not like how many guys are playing football when they're 65. No, isn't that? So it's a great thing, and you carry it with you. But John, why don't you come up and talk a little bit about what happened and just kind of give a better introduction than I can for Ben.
Excellent. Will do. Thank you. So as Mr. Street said, my name's John Coners, and I'm one of the golf coaches at LTHS. Okay, I'll be reading an introduction of Ben Sluice's tonight, prepared by Coach Eber, who had a prior commitment that regrettably did not allow him to be here tonight. Thank you to the mayor and the city council for taking the time tonight to honor one of our outstanding Porter athletes and his accomplishments this season. Okay. On October 19th, junior Ben Sluices captured the IHSA Boys 3A individual state title at the Den at Fox Creek in Bloomington. Ben shot an impressive 4 under par total for the 2-day event, including a 3 under round Saturday. He birdied the last hole of the final round to win by a single stroke over the runner-up. Very impressive. This year's championship completed the back-to-back accomplishment, as Ben also won the individual championship last season as a sophomore and led his team as they captured the 3rd place trophy a year ago. Ben became one of only 11 players since 1923 to win the IHSA golf title twice, and one of only 8 players to complete the feat back-to-back. There has been only one player that has ever won 3 years in a row, and Ben will have a chance to do that next season as he returns for his senior year. Additionally, Ben becomes one of the 4th athletes in Lockport school history to capture multiple individual titles in any sport. Ben is a special athlete and teammate and has been a great leader on this team. He's a great example for his teammates of what it takes to achieve at such a high level. It is a privilege to coach such an outstanding student athlete. I thank Mayor Street and the entire City Council again for recognizing and honoring Ben tonight. Congratulations, Ben, on your accomplishment.
Actually, you guys, it's our honor for you to come here. It really is. We're the ones that love when we can come out and just get to just acknowledge what you guys have done and what you bring to the community. So thank you for coming out tonight. And we just have a certificate that we wanted to give a recognition on behalf of the council. So, let me ask you a question, man. Did you get to wear the green jacket or anything when you win? No, I wish. All right. But we gotta get this guy a green jacket. Yeah. For me, I just need to stick to driving the car. That's my tip. You want- Well, Amanda, can we get a picture? Here you go, man. We'll get a picture with Amanda. Oh, John, come on. It's like a long exposure. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Congratulations. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
I just have one comment. Not only that same weekend that Ben won the state championship, the Lockport Township High School marching band were also state champions. And so hopefully we can have them there in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I'm really hoping so. All right, very good, fun. That's all fun stuff. All right, so we ready to rock and roll here? CA1?
Yes, thank you, Mayor and members of the council. The first item on the agenda is the 2020 schedule of proposed meetings and holidays. Each year, the city is required to publish those in a local newspaper and online. There is an attachment in your packet that talks about all the calendars that we have. We were recommending canceling the January 1st meeting and the July 1st, which we've typically done. We're seeking to approve the 2020 proposed schedule as presented.
All right, questions, concerns, thoughts?
I would like to keep the July 1st meeting. Otherwise, there is basically 30 days between the two meetings. Normally, we cancel on July 4th or July 3rd. This year, Wednesday happens to be July 1st, so there's still 3 days to work that week. It's saying to cancel July 1st. So I would like to keep July 1st. And historically, every time we have canceled, in 2017, we canceled the July 5th, but then we added a Wednesday, June 28th meeting, and then another time I looked it up, there was another special planning meeting when we canceled. And then last year, we had the July 10th special meeting. So I would just like to keep the July 1st meeting, keep it on schedule, keep us easy to remember, and then for any businesses that have to come up for any meetings that we would have to add, we could have business that day. If it's a short meeting, great, but that way at least we can cover bills and stuff that day.
Anybody else? Good. Whatever you guys want to do.
I'm good with that, too.
All right, so we're going to keep our July 1st meeting, and January 1st is Wednesday, so we'll drop that one.
My only concern was that is a week that people do take off.
It's a Wednesday.
But that's okay, that's fine.
All right, sounds good. So January 1st, okay to drop, but we'll keep our July 1st meeting.
No problem, we'll make it so.
All right, we're all good with consent on that, with that stipulation? All right, very good. Appointments to Heritage and Architecture Commission.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Scott Likens is currently on the Planning and Zoning Commission, and our code allows for, or demands for, a Planning and Zoning Commission member to be part of the H&A Commission. Scott's informed us that he's going to be stepping down. He's got a lot of other responsibilities. His term expires on April 1st of 2022. Dave Oxley, the current chair of the Planning and Zoning Commission, has been recommended, and we've got him up here. I know you also recommended Attorney Bill Drew to serve on H&A, but we're going to add that on the next memo for the next week. We'd like to add him as well, and we'll keep it as an action item for the next meeting. And I'd like to correct one scribbler's error on Resolution 19-132, which is the resolution approving this appointment, and it says planning and zoning, so we had a typo in there. It'll be for the H&A Commission. So we'll add Dave Oxley to H&A, and we'll add Bill Drew for H&A, and we'll get that resolution corrected for the next meeting on 11/20.
Did you get my Dan Niehaus recommendation too?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, we did, but I believe that there was only one vacancy for the Planning and Zoning Commission liaison and the other at-large.
Oh, okay. I just, you know what, I threw an extra name out there because I know sometimes, these guys meet so infrequently that sometimes I thought maybe it's good to have a bigger pool. So that was why I was thinking throwing Dan in there, but if you guys, you know, if that's the maximum number, that's fine. So we'll just go with
We
Drew.
can
then.
check with the other membership, and if someone feels like they can't make it anymore and they want to, we can always come back with another change too.
All right, that's fine.
So this is basically sitting on the heritage and architecture and then the planning?
No.
Or it's
No.
like
So-
complementary?
Yeah, Scott Likens is on H&A and Planning and Zoning. He will stay on Planning and Zoning. He's stepping off of H&A. Dave Oxley will be serving on both Planning and Zoning and H&A in his stead. And then we would add Bill Drew as an additional member to only H&A.
Okay, and the person that you had, Mayor, was somebody who was not on a board already, or it was on a board?
No, Dan Niehaus is just a guy, he volunteers for a lot of stuff. He's been helping with our Veterans Day ceremonies and stuff. He's just been somebody who's been wanting to be involved, so I said, well, here's an opportunity. Bill Drew, somebody Darren recommended to me, he used to own a building downtown, so he's kind of familiar with how things work, and so I thought he was a great idea, so we'll put him on. And like we said, I kind of got the name late to you, I think, so we'll put it on as an action item, so you guys can go from there.
All right, thank you.
We'll get that corrected. Thank you.
Everybody good? All right.
The next item, members of the council, CA3, is the extend a service agreement with Rudiger and Tonelli Associates for some more assistance in the Community Economic Development Department. Rod Tonelli himself is here, sitting next to me. He's been involved in helping us since we've had some vacancies in that department. We've done business with Rudiger and Tonelli over the years for different things, ward maps, even when we did those, surveys, et cetera. But we had Rod come in to specifically help us in our staffing role with the vacancy we had. I created a PO not to exceed $20,000 a few months ago. We've spent about $8,000 of that so far for partial billing up through August. Probably another $6,000 or $8,000 is due. I felt it was appropriate to maybe bring this to your attention and say that we'd like to continue this service as needed until the new department head is hired and comes on board, and they can help kind of manage and decide how much more they want to do for the next year or not. So we may ultimately, I only asked to extend it, the 20,000 as kind of an arbitrary number to increase the PO, but we'll probably end up closing that out short.
So if I understand it right, with Lance coming on board soon, this is just if Lance, as he's doing a transition, feels like he needs to access Rod for any of the things that he's been working on, that he can, and that gives us flexibility, but it's not,
Doesn't mean
we may
we're-
not spend any of it, but just in case it needs to be, Lance has that flexibility. Okay. All right, thoughts, concerns?
Because doesn't Lance start before we would vote on it for city council? Because doesn't he start November 18th?
Lance will start November 18th, yes.
And so this wouldn't be voted on until November 20th?
Yes.
So
Should
he
he
would
make
be at
that
the next
decision that day?
yeah, he would be at the next meeting then, it's just here then.
I guess I don't understand the question.
No, because he'll be starting before our next meeting, so he should be at our next meeting.
Yeah, he will.
Okay.
All right, any other thoughts, concerns? We okay with just consent on that for then? Okay.
That's good, thank you.
All right, our property tax levy. Do I need to do the public hearing for this one?
No, that's at the city council meeting.
Okay.
Thank you. So there's a few things I'd like to go over for the property tax. Some of you have heard me say this a few times, but we'll go through it just to make sure everybody's on the same page. This is a little graph of how our property tax bill is divided here in the city. The schools makes up about 62% of the tax bill, and the city is about 9%. This is a breakdown of how the taxes relate for all general fund revenues, and it makes up about 38% of our annual revenues. Interestingly, I went back to look and see, back in 2014, real estate taxes made up 41%. So we're trending down, which is a really good thing. That's, what our public's looking for us. to do, and we're actually getting there. So I could see in a few years that we've actually made some progress in making that number go down. And the number that did go up is mostly like permits, so development is what's helping us to keep our property taxes down. Just a reminder of how the levy is actually created. The township assessor is the one who determines the assessed value at every house. And they usually send that information out to everybody in like August. So you'll get, if your assessed value has gone up, you'll get something in the mail letting you know what your value is. The CPI is determined by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, so they determine how much the CPI can go up from year to year. And then us as a city, we propose the tax levy, and that's what we're here talking about today, reviewing it. We would have a public hearing if it's necessary, and that won't be necessary for us this year because we're not raising the levy by more than 5%. So that's really the state law that says if you're going to raise your levy by more than 5% of your prior year, you would have to hold a public hearing. Well, we're not doing that, so we don't need to have that. And then we'll be seeking council to approve the tax levy at the December 4th council meeting, and then we have to file it with the county before the 4th Tuesday of December. So again, we'd like to remind everybody that estimates are used for the EAV, new property and exemptions. Those actual values are not finalized by the county until the spring, okay? So what we're working on in preparing this levy are estimates, and we're doing the best we can with some information that we get as a preliminary value from the county, but those will not be finalized till the spring. So many communities actually overextend their levy to make sure that they can capture any of the new growth, and we're looking at the new growth being right around 8.7 million this year. These are the types of things that the tax levy does fund: general operations, streets, the police, EMA, you know, all these different things that are listed here. So it covers a number of different things here for us at the city. This is always a graph that's interesting. This is showing us the assessed values, and you can see for the 5th year in a row, our EAV has increased. So the estimated EAV increase is about 64 million over last year. So we're on the positive trend. And then at the same time, if your EAV is increasing, your tax rate's gonna go down. So again, for the 5th year, we're looking as an estimate that our tax rate is gonna go down. And again, that's what matters to our residents here, is that we continue to lower that tax rate, and we're anticipating doing that again this year. So the levy that we have presented is 6.7 million, and it's prepared to capture both new growth and CPI. And the bond and interest for our 2019 bond that we sold this summer is increasing the levy by 40,000. So how does this impact our residents? I always like to show a comparison of if you had a home that was valued at $250,000 last year, and you had a 3% increase to your EAV, your house would be worth $257,000. Okay, but your market value. So then your EAV is a third of that. And then using the new tax rate that we're assuming, your taxes on that $250,000 house would go down for the city portion by $13 next year, okay? So if all of this plays out and your house increased by the assumptions that we're making, and the rate ends up being where we ended up, that's what will happen for our residents here. So that's positive, but you know, each homeowner is different, where your EAV was increased or decreased on an annual basis, and how all the new property and the EAV in total for the city plays out will be determined in April. So, questions?
Make anything?
Well, I'm always encouraged when I see this. You know, when the mayor and I were first elected 6 years ago, how many years ago? You know, you saw that the tax rate was 0.9980. Now projection is 0.82 something. So about a 17% decrease in the property tax rate in 6 years. You know, and so what that tells me here is everybody who sat up here the past 6 years, you know, we've done a pretty darn good job. You know, with all the new growth, we're one of the few towns that have actually had commercial and retail growth and some non-commercial growth, and that's encouraging. It's a lot better than, you know, the other route where the tax rates are going up. So that's I'm always encouraged when I see this.
Very good. I agree, man.
So will this be an action item then when we vote, or is it under consent?
Yes, yes.
It will be an action item.
We can put it on
Okay,
as
I'd
an
like it
action
as an
item.
action item. Thank you.
Yep, we'll put it on as an action item, but it won't be until the first meeting in December.
All right.
At the next meeting, we'll be talking about some of those tax abatements that we put through, and we're gonna continue with for, the next few years.
All right. Very good. Thanks, Lisa. Appreciate it. Why don't I, if you guys don't mind, I'll move AT2 next, so that way AT1 and PZ1, which are similar, can be together. So, Sonny, if you don't mind, can we do the Gaming Commission?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. Item AT2 is the appointment to the city's Video Gaming Commission. As you recall, back on October 2nd, Ordinance 19-31 was approved, and it created the new process for approval for video gaming terminals to be operated in the city. There was two types of licenses, one for the actual suppliers of the video gaming machines, and the other for the actual establishment, the operators, the ones like the liquor licensees that have the video gaming terminals in their businesses. So what this item does is that under that ordinance, it created the Video Gaming Commission composed of three members who have to be at least 21 years of age, be a resident of the city, they don't have any debt that's owing to the city, and what they would do is they would be would look at the application. So under that ordinance, if the mayor gave a preliminary denial of the application, then it would go to the Video Gaming Commission, who would have the ability to have a full hearing, hear any evidence, and the applicant would have to have the burden of convincing the Video Gaming Commission that they should get a license. Now, under that ordinance, and also under our current ordinance, if the Video Gaming Commission ended up denying that application, it ultimately goes to the City Council. So there's different levels of appeals. So what this item does is appoint three people to that commission, and that's Pete Calarelli, Laura Rogers, and Jonathan Pugh. And they are the three people that, just like the Planning and Zoning Commission or any other body like the Historic H&A Commission, the mayor makes a recommendation, but ultimately it's the City Council that approves that recommendation. So that those are the three members that have been identified, and the resolution 19-131 is basically formalizing that approval. And if there are any questions, I would be more than happy to try to answer them.
I have a question. I think it's more towards the mayor, though. Laura Rogers and Jonathan Pugh, are they business owners in the downtown area?
No, they're not. Jonathan works for the Give Something Back Foundation, and Laura is a stay-at-home mom.
Did you think about doing that? Maybe getting somebody from the downtown that maybe lives in Lockport?
Well, they all live in Lockport, but
I mean, I'm sorry, that was a mistake.
well, I tried to find people that I thought had a variety. I mean, Laura's a family that's been in town for a number of generations, and really tied in tightly to the community. So I thought she'd be a good person to have. Pete, I like because he's got some experience on boards, and so he can lend that. Because trying to find people that trying to get new people plugged into things, and so I asked Jonathan his thoughts on it. Wanted to be involved. So those are the reasons why I put those names. I picked them. Pete for a little bit of his experience. One thing I did want to, Catherine's suggestion, I thought it was a good idea, is that perhaps we can stagger them. So for instance, if we can do Pete Calarelli for 1 year, and then say, Jonathan for 2 and Laura for 3, so that way we don't have, everybody has to be reappointed in 3 years, I thought.
And that's true with the H&A Commission. I don't think we've actually fully, implemented that. But I would suggest drawing lots. Basically, you just draw straws in a hat, and whoever gets, the first term, second term, third term, that would be the best way to handle that. Then there's no, any type of animosity or any
Yeah, sure.
accusation that it was done by preferential treatment.
Well,
So
we
they
can
draw
tell,
hats.
all right,
Mhm.
we'll tell them that's their first order of business.
Yes.
You know, one thing that was important to me, Christina, was more along the lines of just being pragmatic. I said, look, one thing about having a gaming commission is that we all wanted it out of our decision-making. Up till now, it's just totally been me, and I felt like that was not appropriate. And then this way it takes politics out of it. The one thing I asked when I was looking for somebody is like, I just want you to be pragmatic. You're not here to be dictators, right? You know, when it comes to, especially with existing businesses coming into compliance, it's like, you guys are gonna have to go into these places and see what's possible and where the struggles are. Not everybody may be able to do exactly what we've been looking for full screening and everything else because of just the size. So I want you guys to be fair and, you know, have the ability to look at things case by case. This would probably be the busiest time of this will be your first 6 months. Because after you guys establish some rules that they can come back to us with and say, look, this is what we're looking at doing, and they can work with the existing business owners with, you know, being helpful and trying to find as much as they can to come into compliance as possible. And they all agreed that that's what they would like to, how they would like to approach it. So to me, that was the most important thing. And they all agreed with that's how they would handle it, so.
I'll second the mayor on that. I called all three of them. My concern was the existing ones and how they were going to have to change their facilities. So, I mean, they all said they understand their role, and they're not like trying to hurt any of our businesses, and they're not trying to take gaming away from the ones that have it already. So I was pretty happy with the three people I talked to. I was a little leery at first because none of them are gamers at all. I thought, how can you have a commission where you have three people who don't game at all being fair? But after talking to them, I believe there is a fairness. But I'm just letting you know that the three people that are picked do not game at all, but they are fair in their judgment.
Okay, the only comment I have, it's just a typo on the resolution. Under the fourth whereas, John Pugh's name is Pugh End, and that needs to be
Yeah,
corrected.
that's just a spacing thing.
Okay,
But,
and also under section 1, it's the same typo.
yes, we will do that. There's a space
All right.
that's missing.
Darren with that eagle eye.
So my only question I also brought up, besides the staggered terms, is we've picked, like Pete is also on the police commissioner board. And I know you just mentioned Dan Niehaus was somebody you turned in later. I don't know if that wants to be the practice where we keep putting the same people on all our different boards, on multiple boards. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but we're in a town of over 25,000 people. I know it's hard to find people, and I like Christina's idea. It would have been nice to have a restaurant in the downtown area on the board, or like JR's, even someone who is one of the existing businesses there. I know it's hard to ask people, but maybe at the 1 year mark then you pick somebody downtown, or, you know, just to kind of look for that for the future.
Well, and like I said, the Pete I thought would be good because I did try to find new people. So Laura and Dan, no, Laura and Dan have never been, or John haven't been on anything. And so having somebody with some kind of experience on how to run a meeting, and I thought was important. I still feel like, and I don't think Pete's gonna have any hard feelings, but I'd be fine with putting Pete on the 1 year turnover, and then, you know, John and Laura can draw straws for 2 and 3. So that way, I think by then everybody will have their feet under them. So I have no problem with that. Anything else? Okay. So are we good then? All right, we'll put on a consent for that? Okay.
I could put that on consent with those changes.
Okay, thank you. All right, so now we can go back to AT1, where we got Lockport Square.
Mayor, members of the City Council, item AT1 is the First Amendment to the Lockport Square Annexation Agreement. As you recall, earlier this year, back in February, the City Council approved an economic incentive agreement to allow FCA Realty to open up a new automobile dealership in the Lockport Square by providing a sales tax sharing agreement for the new automobile dealership. So with the economic incentive in place, the next step is that the FCA has submitted the application for the development agreement. There's going to be also a re-subdivision plat for the Lockport Square that the City Council will address and deliberate concurrently with this First Amendment to the annexation agreement. You may be asking, well, why do we need to amend the annexation agreement? That's because the old annexation agreement in 2007 had some prohibition and limited automobile-related uses. So obviously, in order to have the FCA Realty to have the automobile dealership in place, with the operator being Bentonhausen Auto Group, which is a pretty respected auto dealership group, for them to operate, there has to be an amendment to the annexation agreement. The original annexation agreement also allowed one tire battery lube express use in lot 19, which is where Lockport, where the FCA Realty would be opening up the Chrysler Jeep Dodge Ram dealership. And then the 2 lots east of that is lot 20 and 21. So the original annexation agreement allowed a lube, tire battery express lube use in those lots. The other thing that the the old 2007 annexation agreement allowed was 1 gas station in outlots 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12, which are the outlots that are facing 159th Street. So what the proposed amendment will do is that it would obviously allow the automobile dealership, the Chrysler Jeep Dodge Ram dealership, to have other auto-related uses, such as they could have, automobile repair shop, they could have towing, things that the original annexation agreement prohibited. So that would open up that ability for the Chrysler Jeep Dodge Ram dealership to have the ancillary uses. Now, the other thing that the lot owners have proposed is they will eliminate the gas station. So there won't be any gas station in that development. Also, they're eliminating the use, or eliminating the allowed use of the tire, the lube, express shops along the outlots along 159th Street. So they're kind of giving up some of what they were allowed to do in the original annexation agreement, but at the same time, they're proposing to allow the other remaining lots, and I can't point out, I don't have a clicker or pointer, but those are the lots that are east of what's on your the site plan. So some of those lots that are what shows to be parking lots could potentially be developed into an automobile dealership. That's one thing that they're proposing, that their last draft that they submitted to us, they're proposing to open up the ability, and based upon the spaces that are available, it's a possibility that there could be other automobile dealership in that area. So basically, this is a proposed, draft. This is an agreement that obviously the city would have to agree to, and there are things that the developer and the lot owners are giving up, but there are things that they're proposing to open up. So it's, at this stage, that's something that's negotiable and something that the city council should deliberate. The actual hearing on the proposed amendment to the annexation agreement won't be until November 20th, but even after it's approved, there's still ability for the parties to negotiate and fine-tune the agreement. So with that, I know there's a lot to
One
kind of
clarification
absorb.
was that a gas station could still be allowed only as an ancillary
Yes,
use for
yep.
like the Costco situation. So if you have a Costco, sometimes they have a gas station internally in the site. They're giving up an opportunity to have a gas station on a outlot that they used to have, so they gave that up. So, but that was, there might still be a gas station out there, but only if it was affiliated with a Woodman's or a Costco or something like that.
Yeah, some other primary use. The other thing I forgot to mention is that they added in the ability to have a daycare center. So the original annexation agreement had a prohibition on a daycare center being opened up as a primary use, and so they're proposing to eliminate that. So that's some of the give and take of course, of amending an annexation agreement, but this is up for discussion, and I would be more than happy to answer any questions.
All right, thoughts, concerns?
Mike, I do have a concern. What we're saying is that the remainder lots can also, another dealership could approach the city to be built there?
Yes.
Is that what?
So, I mean, obviously, it's not, it would be a permitted use. It would still have to go through the approval, go through everything else, but that's what they're proposing at the latest draft to.
Would that only be the east half of the property, or?
Yeah, it would be sort of like, based upon the size and location, it would be the properties between the.
West half, I should say.
Yeah, the,
Apologies.
between
West
the area between the Jeep dealership and
Center road there.
the theater, but not in the outlots, obviously. That's what's, you know, they wouldn't be able to have a dealership on any of the outlots, the lots that are facing the 159th Street.
Right, but, I don't know, I think I'm getting mixed up here in how that's good would look.
Yeah.
Right, so there could be another dealership in that lot next to, right, on the upside of Chipotle and the mattress firm.
Well, if I understand it right, what they're asking for is that everything else in there can be a car dealership. In the back.
Yeah, in the back. The only thing would be, they can't do it in the outlots.
Right,
Yeah.
okay.
So, I mean, and that's a draft they're proposing, you
Yeah,
know. And like I said, this is back and forth negotiating. If that's something that is not palatable to the city council, we could always go back and say, that's not going to work, and we're going to have to, you know.
Mayor, if I could add just
Reset.
maybe a couple of thoughts for context here. So, so as Sonny laid out, the original agreement, which was done in 2007, that agreement was very specific in that it said we're going to build a Home Depot and a Target, right? And in between, we'll build inline retail strip mall. And as we know, neither of those things occur, and we have no probability of those occurring. So as you debated earlier, the idea of the car automobile dealership coming in and did the tax incentive agreement, we've kind of said we're okay with that change. You know, when that comes in, that obviously, as you all can see, everywhere you see a car dealership, there's an increased probability that there is another car dealership, right? And those are obviously great things from a sales tax perspective to have the ability to do. So a lot of this is cleaning up the agreement to say that the Target and Home Depot that it intended aren't going to be there. The agreement very specifically expected them, and at the same time recognizing and trying to open the possibility for the second dealership. That's the thing you're being asked to consider.
Sure.
And again, what we've chatted back and forth with the owner about is in exchange for that, you know, can we remove the things we already gave you, which was a right to a gas station and a lube up front, and then those are the lots we think we have better opportunity to see continue for more traditional retail or food-related use, right? So it's kind of just a balance of trying to recalibrate this entire property for what it can be today, because it's not able to be what we thought it was in 2007, if that makes sense.
I understand that. I guess my concern is, okay, so then they're giving them the ability to have a gas
Station.
On an outlot.
there, because
Yep.
usually they do have,
Or an oil lube or tire shop.
Yeah, so one each. So they're limited to one each. The other thing that, you know, when Rob mentioned about what was the intent of the development, the other change for the amendment is that a lot of the design standards and signage was meant for the Target Home Depot. So the other proposed change in the First Amendment is that the future use of any of the properties, any of the lot owners, would be exempt from the design standards of the Home Depot Target. It's just getting in line with what the actual development is currently versus what it was meant back in
Right.
2007.
Great point. And so we're basically saying, we know that we can't build those buildings that you intended. Let's open it up. So if we go forward with this amendment as proposed, if that is the path we end up down, they do, just to remind you, they do have to come back before you. So, right, if there is another car dealership, if that is the probability comes to fruition, back before you for final development plan, re-subdivision needs, et cetera. At that point, we'll be reviewing their architecture, signage, landscaping, lighting, et cetera, according to our code standards and not according to the agreement which thought it was going to be a Home Depot, right?
That's fine. Well, I'll give you one perspective on this, is that when the car dealership was first being proposed, I called Marcus Theater and asked them, how do you guys feel about a car dealership? I know it's different from what the plaza looked like when you guys purchased the property. And they were like, well, we don't think one car dealership would be a problem, but if maybe there were multiple, that could be problematic. So one of the things is like, where is Marcus? So one of the problems is, so they purchased the property, we all approved the plans, and then, I was like, when do you got a start date? And their issue now is internally is that, like right now, what we're doing is we're bringing all of our existing theaters up to this kind of new business model, which is the wider seats and the food component. So their corporate decision at the moment is to, before they break ground on their new theaters, that they wanted to bring everything else up to speed. So, the last thing I want to do, though, is undermine that by, if they come back and they're like, oh my gosh, this whole thing is car dealerships, then it's like, that may be problematic for them to open it. For me, my perspective on this is I'm okay with doing this. We all know the world has changed, and the big box retail is not what it used to be. Nobody's building those things, and so this is, a little different than what everybody expected. But of course, Bettenhausen is a great user, and having a dealership here would be nice. We haven't had a new car dealership in town since when it was the old building where Lock and Mule was going in, right? That was the last time we had a new car dealership. So it's a positive thing, but changing the entire trajectory when I already have a property owner, a Marcus, that shared with me explicitly that, like, yeah, 2 might be problematic for us, right? We didn't buy this property with that in mind. They were okay with the 1. So I'd hate to undermine another user here that's already shared that with us. Now, so here, I would recommend, this is just me, right? This is a council decision, but like, here's my thoughts on it, right? Is that, and let's be frank, I don't celebrate anything until the ribbon's cut, right? Marcus purchased the property and but who knows? The world may change, right? And they may never build. It's just a fact that we all have to face all the time. And if that's the case, and, it shifts and, another car dealership comes in and Marcus says they're never going to come, we have an opportunity to then maybe do another car dealership. But I think the way it should work is developers should come back for a second special use for it. I don't think it's wise to grant it up front for the entire plaza, because all that means is, 2 years from now, let's say there's a giant change in the council and nobody remembers any of this stuff, which happens all the time, and it's like they come in and say, well, it's a permitted use, you can't deny us, and so all of a sudden you have 2 car dealerships as opposed to, the belief that, like, well, they're going to come back and they got to submit. It doesn't always work that way. And so I'd rather give either this council or a future council the opportunity to say, if you guys want to do another car dealership, we're going to slow boat this, and we want to see what's happening. And we still have another person that purchased the other corner, who purchased it before any dealerships were here, who was hesitant about more than 1. So I think I'd like to respect that property owner as well.
That's not to say, like any agreement, it can be amended. We've had annexation agreements that's been amended 2 or 3 times.
You could be more
So-
specific and just define the western half or anything the council wants to undertake.
So for me, I would define that particular spot that Bettenhausen wants to use as the place where you can do the car dealership, and not for anything else at this time. Now, I know they made some concessions, like, oh, there's no lube on the outlot, but I'm like, let's be honest, you got a big lube shop at Bettenhausen. It's selling tires and it's making, oil changes, so it's already there. So it's not really they're giving up a lot on that. We're already allowing it. We're just putting it in the back instead of in the front. So that's just my 2 cents on this, so.
And also, would that car dealership take up as much room as what this one does? Like, would it be like the same amount of rectangle space for the next car dealership? Because that's,
don't
the-
have
We
any
don't know,
yeah, we
but
don't have any petitions
any
right
of
now.
that spot between what's in that site plan between the Chrysler Jeep Dodge to Marcus Theater, that's the whole area that could have auto
because that
dealership.
will definitely change the whole look of it. I mean, I could see where your theater might be like, wait a minute, I was expecting all these stores to also be my customers.
you could
I
lim-
like dealerships, don't get me wrong, I mean, but I can see your point too, Mayor, where, you know, how does Holiday Inn feel if they're next to two dealerships?
Well, I could say probably Holiday Inn is not the end of the world for them, because the guys who are building Holiday Inn actually own the square, so they fully understand what's happening. But again, you know, they sold that to Marcus, and Marcus said what they said to me, and I think, you know, I'd like to see Marcus here, right? And it's already, you know, kind of, I don't know how it's gonna play out with their, you know, we're working on our existing theaters, and so, again, because I don't celebrate anything until the ribbon's cut, I'd hate to undermine it by suddenly they come back in 2 years ready to build, and they see a whole thing full of car dealerships, so.
You kind of have three choices. I mean, you can limit them to the corner where it's currently proposed. You could define a little bit bigger area if you want, or what they're requesting right now is that entitlement would be available for the whole center.
And I would, yeah, and I know they're looking for that front lot too, and that's fine. I can even live with that, because some of the thoughts they had was it might be possible to put a small boutique dealership up in the front that they're looking for. So I can live with that, because essentially that's all on that section over there. But for me, I would just, that's what I would counsel, and leave the rest of it as is. If somebody wants to do a car dealership, they would have to come back with this process, so it gives us a little bit more, or future council, a little more opportunity to be thoughtful about it.
So with that direction, we'll have a proposed draft for them to look at.
So
with
can we
the-
just summarize now exactly what the draft is going to consist of, please?
I believe the direction, if I'm, you know, wrong, please let me know, is that the lots, the proposed lots in which what the Chrysler Jeep Dodge Ram dealership that would be operated by Benton Housen, those would be the lots that would be allowed
One
to
out
have
lot.
a new automobile dealership, and that's limited to that lot only. It would be 19A, I believe, when it's subdivided and revised, would be what it would
14A.
be, so.
14A
Oh, 14, I'm sorry, 19A, not 14A,
In lot
yes.
6.
and Lot 6. And again, I think that's, you know, as Ben laid out, you have three options here. You know, the most conservative approach is to say, as I thought the word we chose earlier, recalibrating this whole site, right, is a good way to think about it. And so if you take that approach, it's, you know, I want you to come back and ask each time, and we'll decide at that moment. So it puts a little more burden on you, and it gives the landowner, you know, less permissions up front. But again, it's one of the options you have to pursue, so.
That it's considered a burden on the city. I think it's just keeping track of what's going on, and we need to consider how that area is gonna look. You know, like I said, I'm not thrilled about a whole lot of, you know, automobile, you know, sales going on. You know, we agreed on the Chrysler Jeep Dodge Ram, fine, but then to open all that rest of the land, I think we really have to be careful, because we will change the image of that section of land, that we still wanna perhaps attract still some businesses to open up there. And, you know, I sure don't wanna discourage Marcus from building.
Yeah,
We've
sure.
been waiting for that forever.
Yeah.
It seems like, you know, so we need to really put a little halt on, I think we do need to review anything that's proposed for that.
Did you say earlier that, well, since this was made back in 2007, the idea of what originally would go back there has changed in terms of the market? And so if we don't evolve, we're basically looking at empty space for
Yeah, it's
longer
been
than we
over a decade
anticipated?
where it hasn't moved much, right? And we've been aggressive in allowing them to develop the outlots first. That's an untraditional path. We usually build the big centers in the back and then the outlets. So trying to help them get some activity. We've got some good tenants. Certainly the Holiday Inn Express and Marcus Theaters were great wins. I mean, the Holiday Inn Express is about to break ground. Marcus Theaters gone a little quiet. The car dealership, as we all debated, we thought would be reasonable as an isolated thing, and I think what I heard was, let's see how it plays out. I mean, I guess even though if you say no to the rest of the entitlement to the whole center, doesn't mean that you'll say no 2 years from now, 3 years from now, whenever another dealership comes to us. And I think the mayor makes a good point, is that if you do grant this entitlement to the whole center, I mean, it's very difficult to say no later, right? So, I mean, this is definitely a control point that you have.
All right, so clear
But the
direction,
inline-
Sonny, for
The inline shopping is probably very difficult to.
There's no doubt.
The market's
and-
different. yeah.
And some of the things that I've been wanting to, have a conversation with the owners is like, how do we deal with the middle? And maybe there's a different way of looking at it. And so it is a meeting that I was trying to have, I wanted to have a conversation with Jim earlier, but I was talking with the Boy Scouts, which is okay, but.
We can always
so-
come back and revisit it.
Yeah, so we do want to look at how do we finish off this center and.
Can I just make a suggestion also? Anyone that comes to the city council or, to put together a proposal that they want to build something, I think we need to have a timeline. Because I think we did an injustice to the city that we didn't ask Marcus to give us a time frame that they were going to.
Well, I did tell them this. I said, when they gave me that thing about, well, we're gonna visit our existing things, I said, well, you guys are gonna have to understand that whole, whatever help we were putting out there, it's gonna have to be renegotiated. And she's like, no, we understand. Because that's the only way you can put pressure on them.
But do you remember, they came with such a hurry to approve, and then all
The
of a
old
sudden.
hurry up and wait, yeah.
Yeah, and now it's all, now we don't even know when they're gonna start. So
The only leverage we would have is like if you were gonna have some incentive. We had a little bit of a sales tax incentive. That's the only way you can put pressure on them. Otherwise, it's like if you don't have any of that, what leverage do you have? So, but I told them, I said, you guys are gonna have to understand that, that may end up getting renegotiated. And they understood, so I did put that out there for them, so.
Yeah, I think we need to.
I think if the Jeep dealership, if you let them, they'd start building tomorrow. I don't think, I'm not too concerned.
Oh, yeah, as far as the,
And I'm sure.
They're not
those
gonna
guys.
start,
Sure,
yeah, those guys are
they
gonna build.
No,
For-
that's
and
not an issue.
We're very cognizant of that, and I think going forward, we put in a lot of, of that terms, especially with the Jeep dealership. We did put in a provision that they had to open up within a certain time period after getting approval of the permit. So that kind of triggers they have to start opening up. Otherwise, they're
That's good,
penalized,
yeah.
every month that they don't open. So going forward, we have been putting in those
Okay, great.
agreements in that term, so.
Yep. No, it is, there's no doubt.
Sorry, what'd you say? I didn't
But,
hear.
but we can do a timeline with these guys because there's an incentive, so you get some leverage. So I agree that was the right move.
Is there a car dealership that wants to come, like an additional one that wants to come right now?
We have had conversations with
There
another
is,
car dealer.
okay.
But nothing solid, nothing,
So
there's
is
been
this
some.
why we're bringing this up?
No, this just kind of came up at the last minute of, are we gonna address this entitlement for the rest of the center now or later? So
Right.
it sounds like we're gonna address it later.
All right, so, Sonny, we'll look for your draft.
Yeah, what we'll do is, the public hearing will be for the 20th, and I will be sending out our changes to the developer's attorney, and we'll present a different draft. And it will be an action item anyway, because it's a public hearing.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, so, what do we got next? PZ2?
PZ1, I think, right?
PZ1 is next.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, because I swapped them around. PZ1's next.
Okay, so just piggybacking off of that conversation about the FCA Jeep dealership. So we have the next two items, PZ1 and PZ2, relate to the FCA Realty LLC development, the Bentonhausen Jeep Chrysler Dodge and Ram dealership. So PZ1 is the second re-subdivision of Lockport Square. So this is just a replatting that reconfigures the parcel lines to create the parcel that FCA would then purchase and develop the Bentonhausen Jeep Chrysler Dodge Ram dealership on. So it's relatively straightforward. The other thing they are doing then is the remainder of that plat is what's left between FCA Jeep and Marcus Theaters property. And then the common roads are a lot in the plat so that they can be managed in common by the operating easement agreement that all the owners share in. Okay, so that's essentially the core of what's in that plat. Plan Commission reviewed it. They made a 4-0 unanimous recommendation to you to go ahead and approve it. We had a couple minor conditions on it, and all those have been addressed, so it will be presented before you next time, completely clean, ready to go, no changes that have to be made to the plat. And so staff's request is that you have it on your agenda, if able, on your consent agenda for next meeting.
All right, thoughts, concerns? Okay, I think we're good with that as far as consent goes, so, okay. All right, Rob, what do you got next?
Okay, next item is PZ2, and this is the actual development plan then for the Bentonhausen facility. So again, the applicant is FCA Realty. Just a couple of highlights for everyone that's watching and listening. So the proposed dealership is going to be about a 34,000 square foot automobile sales center, and it will have, as Sonny laid out, some ancillary uses that'll go with it. So it'll have a repair facility, it'll have a car wash, they'll have the ability to do used car sales for those that they take in for trades, etc. So what you typically expect of a full service auto dealership. Let me highlight just a couple of other things. So we've gone through all of their improvement plans. And again, they've met all of the staff review comments, so they have no pending conditions to deal with at this point. Everything's been done in order. They're going to have some other highlights here. 536 stalls are what's out there. If anyone has been out there recently, as you'll recall, you know, what was originally proposed for this Home Depot site, you know, the parking lot was partially installed, so the islands are in, some of the utilities are in. They're essentially repurposing that to the extent they can to be the sales facility lot. Again, it'll allow them to have about 536 units for outdoor inventory. You'll note in the memo some of the highlights relative to their operations. So sales are going to be open Monday through Friday, 8 to 8. Saturday 8 to 6, service is Monday through Friday 7 to 7, and Saturday 7 to 4. They'll be closed on Sundays. They'll have a full fencing and gating system around the entire facility so that they're able to provide security. As you can imagine, with the multi-millions of dollars of inventory out there, security is very important. That's all decorative fencing on the front, typical aluminum decorative fencing with matching gates. On the back or rear side, it's black coated chain link for the gates and fencing component. But all nice looking stuff. Building architecture is very good looking, a combination of a bunch of materials. We have a slide in there of what the building looks like. The tax incentive agreement you previously approved required that they have the name Lockport in the title of it, so you'll see that that's actually included on the building, in addition to all the brands of the different autos that will be for sale there, and obviously the Bentonhausen name. So signage in this case is a little more intense than we'd have on typical retail buildings, but I think obviously everyone understands why that's necessary with the number of brands and what we're dealing with here for an auto dealership. So relative to signage, it's what you see is what you get. That's the package we're approving and what they'll build. All the trash enclosures, dumpsters are on the rear side or the service side of the building in full enclosures that are stone and brick. They have some unique things. They've agreed to, they don't have really the ability to do landscaping in front of the building as we typically would require, so they're going to do some planters that are architecturally in jive with the building, and they'll have seasonal planting plants that go in that. They have bike racks and all the pedestrian amenities that we have asked them to include in the front of the building. They do have a unique feature. If you look at the picture that's in front of you, bottom left corner, they have a Jeep climbing a rock. That's actually part of one of their signage elements that'll go up on the northeast corner of the property. What else? I think maybe I'll just close with one last thing and talk about photometrics a little bit. Because again of the security needs, as you're all aware, auto dealers have a little brighter lighting than we tend to have on other users. So staff acknowledged that that needs to be the case for what they're doing there, but we did ask them if they could explore ways that at night after they're closed we can turn the lights down. So what they've agreed to do, and they've since submitted a plan by which the lighting they have will be turned down and, by 50% at 10 o'clock at night, okay? So each of the individual fixtures out there will have a dimmer device that's pre-programmed to do that. So, again, I think that's a good way to approach. There's no housing near there. It's not an issue from light spillage onto houses as we might have in other places, but, you know, again, just as a way to ask them to reduce the glare, still provide enough security level lighting for the site overnight. So they've agreed to do that. So they are here tonight, both representatives from FCA and their engineers. If you do have any particular questions you want to talk about. Other than that, again, the question is to place this on your agenda for November 20th, either for consent or for a specific action item, if that's your preference.
All right, crew, thoughts, concerns, questions?
You want to ask it?
Yeah, just to clarify, the entry to the service area or to the front door is off of Adelman, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Does that seem backward, or, I mean, so you're gonna come off of 159th, you will not see it other than that little special lot that we might have up front, that's where they're gonna see coming in, and then they'll come down Edelman, basically where McDonald's is, you'll turn, or real close to that, you'll turn, but the building is then facing the back, like the front is flipped, or,
The building faces 159th Street.
So
but that's not next to Panera there. Won't fit in that spot, right? Cause it, the Jeep.
The thing is the purple thing in the very back of the building.
Yeah.
The front of the building, when you come down Edelman and you take a left, you are gonna cross right in front of the building, right there.
But which way's facing, what is facing 150?
Lachi is the empty lot right next to Panera. Lot 6 is the empty lot right next to Panera.
But this picture, which way is it facing? Is it facing 159th this way, or is it facing this way?
South.
It's facing south this way, right?
So
It's facing this way.
so that picture you're holding up, I think, is the front of the building.
Right, but
That
is
is
it
facing
facing-
159th Street.
Because
It
it
is
looks
facing
flipped, the difference on this, it looks flipped though, when we're looking at the purple picture.
the entryway is not Adelman then,
There's multiple entryways.
Oh, there is, okay.
Yes. So they have,
but the front of the
so you have
building-
the common drive that separates the outlots, so where Panera is, right, from these back lots. So there's two entrance points off that common drive. Those are there today. If you drive out there, you'll see they're chained off that you can't drive in. And then there will be two entrances off of Edelman. One, it lines up with what would be the front of the proposed building, and one is the service drive that's on the back side of the building. So maybe what might be throwing you off is this drawing that's up on the screen right now too, is kind of flipped. So go back one, right, so that drawing, so north on this drawing is at the bottom. So
So
159th
that's
is
why
the
we're
bottom of
looking
the
at it.
drawing.
That's why we're asking, we're like,
Yeah.
we're looking at it, you know, it's,
Yeah.
the
So
print is
what's
this
the- What's the
small.
name of that street then, that it's actually going to have the front entrance to the building?
Yeah, doesn't have a
Is it
name.
gonna have a name to it, or?
Doesn't have a name.
Does it look
doesn't
better
have
on
an
that
exit.
one?
Just access into their,
Okay, okay.
it's not a road. Yeah.
So typically, you're gonna make a left and go up Edelman, and you're probably gonna make a left at that big turn, and you're gonna come in and turn right to go into the entrance of the front of the building.
So the building sits in the same spot that if this were a shopping center, the shopping center building
retail
would have
would've been.
sit, right? It's at the back of the parcel. And the parking field that would have been in front of that is the car display sales area. So
Okay,
it's
does that all
no,
make sense now?
Yeah, it started to. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
So it's,
All right, you guys want to do action or consent? All right,
so it's gonna look like a parking lot.
So consent, is that what I heard?
yeah, just wait for these guys to finish.
Because it's gonna just be parking at the street.
You guys all set back there?
But they want the cars in front of the dealership, or push the building in the front of the cars. If you go along
Oh,
59th Street.
that's right, the cars are all in the front, yeah. That's right.
All right, we're good?
You can't sell your product.
All right.
I think so, yes. Yes,
That's fine.
We're,
All right.
we're good.
All right, so we'll do a consent with that, thank you. All right, moving along, we got PZ3.
Yep, so our next two items are PZ3 and PZ4. I'll run through them briefly. These are both Prologis related. Again, Amy Zepka from Prologis is here, as well as her design engineer if you have detailed questions. PZ3 is a final development plan approval for what we call Building 3. It's a 452,000 square foot building. This kind of sits in the middle of the overall line of buildings in the central part of the park. Plan Commission approved it with a 4-0 unanimous recommendation. There are no outstanding review items or conditions that we have from staff, so it will come to you, with a clean resolution, nothing but our just standard conditions for development going forward. It's consistent with the preliminary development plan and concept plan that you previously have approved. And it's consistent architecturally and landscape and design-wise with the other buildings that they've already prepared and concluded out there. So, again, I can get into more details if you like in terms of architecture, landscaping, et cetera, but again, I think you've been through 2 or 3 of these already and, are able to see what a good job they've done in terms of the design. And we'll do a good job on the city side making sure they keep up with that. So again, the suggestion is to make it a consent agenda item and or an action item if you prefer. So,
All right, crew, thoughts, concerns, questions? Okay, pretty straightforward. Okay, so we'll do a consent then? Okay.
okay, and then Mayor and Council, PZ4, my last item here is, again, as I said, Prologis. This has got a few more layers to it, so this does a number of things. So first, this is granting a special use permit to amend their planned industrial development. Sometime back in the last year or so, you approved a development agreement amendment which allowed the frontage of 143rd to become M1, and that those to be industrial buildings where previously that was commercial zoning. So this is the follow-up to what you have permitted in that development agreement. So this would amend the planned industrial development to say that's how we're going to now use the front. And what we're showing is what we call building 6 and 7 along the frontage of 143rd on either side of Prologis Parkway. Essentially about 520,000 square feet of buildings, 200,000 or so on building 6 and 321,000 on building 7. I think it's 525 is 525,000 is the total square footage. So part of this ordinance would be to, again, grant a special use, amending the planned unit development to acknowledge this is the plan for how those buildings will be sited on that front part. The second part of this ordinance would be then to approve the preliminary and final subdivision plat for those 2 buildings. And then the third part is to approve their preliminary and final development plans for buildings 6 and 7. Again, we've reviewed all of the plans. This comes to you with a clean set of reviews, no outstanding engineering or planning comments that have to be addressed. Plan Commission reviewed it and recommended it unanimously with a 4-0 vote. Again, it's consistent with the concept plan and the preliminary development plan that you previously approved, and consistent with the design guidelines, et cetera, as we just discussed on the prior item as well. To save you 10 minutes, I won't read all the details unless you want me to go through the stuff on the architecture, landscaping, et cetera. I'm going to hope that you're comfortable at least, because we've been through this numerous times. So available to talk through any of the details you want, and again, their applicant and their design consultants are here as well.
I think originally, when they came in for the concept plan, they were labeled as building A and B.
That's
so
correct. I think in the original concept plan approval, they
you
were called A
recall
and
that,
B.
yeah.
Yep. And now 6 and 7. Yep. So, again, suggestion is to place it on consent agenda if you're comfortable with that. If not, then an action item specifically on it. And I'd be happy to fill in or talk about any details that you'd like to.
All right, crew, thoughts? Okay, yeah, I think it's been a good swap. Put the commercial down there on 140 or 171, and so I think this keeps everything up close to the highway exit, which I think is good. So, like I said, we've all talked about it in the past, so if you guys are good with consent, we can do consent.
Okay, thank you.
All right. PW.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Several items on the agenda this evening. First, PW-1, 2020 sanitary sewer lining. A lot of the projects that you'll see tonight are related to our treatment plant and conveyance system and the stormwater system that we have throughout the city. So, common theme tonight. Again, PW-1, this is in regards to our sanitary sewer lining, which occurs on every other year. We go out and we do televising, and based on that televising, which we've done this year, 2019, we actually started in 18, finished it in 2019. We've evaluated, or will be evaluating, 50,000 linear feet of sewer that was televised. So based on what that shows us, that will show us exactly where we're getting infiltration, where we have sources of water that we don't want to treat. We don't want to pay chemical treatment, electricity, electricity to run the pumps. So obviously this is a benefit to the city from eliminating the infiltration and reducing our costs. So we're asking this evening for council's concurrence to award Strand Associates, not award, but accept their proposal to provide the attached scope of services, which will be to continue evaluating those 50,000 feet, putting together the exact locations which we will be lining, and then going out and administering that contract and providing the construction observation as part of that project. This evening, I would ask for that to be awarded to Strand Associates, $34,000, and the lining will be completed in 2020. We
From rain events, we're not sure where.
will have that discussion in about two items, but this item, this is just locating, I shouldn't say just locating. This is our annual project that we've been doing for a number of years now that eliminates those areas. We are taking it a step further in PW-3 though, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. PW-2, this is for the release of a letter of credit bond for Rose Lockport Center. Rose Lockport Center is located on Farrell Road. It is on the west side, just north of Aldi and the Murphy gas station, and just south of Culver's. This development has some additional work, or some additional area that is to be developed in the future. However, at this time, they have completed all of the outstanding items. They have completed their landscaping restorations. They have completed the detention, all of their utilities at this time. So with that, they have asked for the release. We have our engineer that has provided the letter of credit release recommendation. Both our internal and our external engineers have reviewed that. We have the bond reduction request from the applicant. We also have the certificate of initial acceptance from the applicant, which states that everything has been done according to plan. Once we receive, if council concurs, we will release this bond if and when they provide their 10% maintenance bond, which goes on for 1 year after they provide that, and we have it in hand. This evening, we would be looking for council's concurrence to release this letter of credit, which is contingent upon us having the 10% 1-year maintenance bond in hand.
I have a question. On the building that's not there yet, that they proposed, I don't have to drive through and everything. So then, is the utilities all in place for that? Or if that building needs to be built someday, we're gonna get another plan on drainage that they need to pay for, or they will? Okay.
There will be a brand new letter of credit. So typically what happens, just like similar for Prologis, for instance, there is an overall site development which gets the main, the conveyance system and the collection system to the site. So it gets water and sanitary. takes care of the stormwater on a big picture, so it takes care of your detention ponds. And then as each individual building comes in, they have to put up a new letter of credit for each individual building. So we start with the letter of credit for the overall, that slowly reduces down and gets released, then each building provides a letter of credit, and they have to provide all of their internal site improvements, which includes utilities.
Thank you.
Yes.
Anything else? All right, thanks, JR. We're good with consent then? Okay.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. PW-3, this is the, this is the big project for the evening. As council and many of our residents have been aware over the last year, really, we've had excessive rains for almost, feels like all of 2019. We have experienced, a lot of backup across the city. I don't want to say any more, any less than any neighboring communities, but I think we've all felt the impacts. And with that, we are bringing this evening some consideration to council for some future projects. One which we do have currently on our B projects for the CIP, and that is for the treatment plant expansion. So ultimately, we have on our CIP, our 10-year CIP, a $25 million placeholder for a future plant expansion. Again, this is a B project. When the time comes, we will bring this to council for consideration. That is dependent upon what type of developments we have. That is dependent upon what future growth we have. A lot of factors play into that, but we do have it on the radar. The first step that we need to address, however, is why are we receiving some additional flows, and quite honestly, quite a bit of additional flows at the treatment plant. Not only does that impact the treatment plant, but it also impacts our conveyance system, which once it hits our conveyance system, which is the sanitary sewer that we all see running down right away, rear yards, that is what everybody's homes are connected to. When that continues to fill up and fill up and fill up with rainwater, then we have some of the challenges that we experienced this year. A lot of things impact that. There can be cracks in pipe, there can be infiltration coming through the manholes. Underground, above ground, we don't have the correct covers on them. We have individual homeowners and businesses that may have downspouts, connected into the sanitary sewer, some pumps connected into the sanitary sewer. Not intentionally, necessarily, but it's just the way that it's always been. And so what we are trying to task ourselves with is really understanding why, how, where all this water is coming from. So it's a little bit of a two-pronged attack here. One is at the treatment plant, when we have these heavy rains, when we have 3 inches of rain in 6 hours, we have such a flow that gets to the treatment plant in such a hurry that the plant gets overrun and we cannot treat it. We have nowhere for it to go. It overruns the system. And so what we have to do is we have to do the best we can. We have to get manual pumps out, and we have to have all hands on deck to address that. So the first thing that the first item that we have here is Division Street Treatment Plant Expansion. What we would be asking for would be council's consideration for the Phase 1 expansion of our treatment plant, which is the headworks. So it are those initial pumps that when the sewage comes down to the plant by gravity, so it's flowing downhill by gravity, gets to the head of the plant, so it gets to the front door of the plant. We need some additional pumps. We need some additional ability to handle those heavy flows. So my question as an engineer is, why not treat the source? Why not treat the problem and not just go down to the treatment plant and build that thing to where we can handle 10 inches of rain in an hour? Why not fix all the water that we're getting in? So that is the second piece of this. So the conveyance system engineering that we have proposed this evening as well, this will include us going out, which we have already done some preliminary work with Strand on, and we've gotten some initial numbers that are quite, very clearly show that we have an issue. So we're seeing 40 times the amount of water, 40 times the amount of water that we should be seeing in some of these sewers. And so what we've done, and what this conveyance system engineering project will do, is through a series of metering and meter locations, we will try to determine exactly where all of this water is coming from. So on a large scale, we will meter, and we will start to isolate and find pockets where we have some sort of infiltration that's not a sump pump, that is a creek, maybe. There's something that is, so when the creeks get to a certain height, maybe there is an overflow that was put in at some point that we don't know about, put in 75 years ago because people had flooding, and it was, well, we're gonna fix this issue. It worked for a long time, and now it's not working anymore. Now we have too many people, I shouldn't say too many, we have now filled the system with wastewater, which is what it's for, and we no longer have room for this, creek water or storm water or whatever the case may be. So, again, we are not just saying, let's forget about all the conveyance and the hard stuff, and let's just go right here and throw all of our money there. We are asking for the plant expansion, which would be required when the next steps come forward. So we are asking for that. However, we are also going to, again, try and attack the real problem. So this evening, with all that being said, and I appreciate everybody's ear this evening, the total cost of the work we are asking for would be $211,000 for the Division Street Treatment Plant expansion. Again, this is money that is part of our B projects in the CIP. That will take us from planning to design to the construction of the project. So that will take us all the way up to, we have plans out on the street, we get our bids come in, proposals come in, we accept those, we get right to that first step. The second project that we have is the conveyance. That one is $129,960. Again, that is for the conveyance. So that will be more of the citywide, what can we do to help alleviate some of this stormwater infiltration. So this evening I would ask for council's concurrence. We have two separate resolutions. Resolution 19-129 and Resolution 19-130. 19-129 is in the amount of $211,000, and that is for the Division Street Sanitary Treatment Plant upgrade design, bidding, and planning related services. I would ask for council's concurrence on that item. And then I guess I'll throw the second one out there, 19-130. That is for $129,960, and again, that is for our modeling, metering, and surveying for the conveyance system.
So let me ask you, Brent, because this is a B project, and at least the first one, and the second one wasn't even on the B list, how's this working with our budget and working,
I amended the budget that we have at the public hearing for this.
Okay, so you're able to factor it in?
Yeah.
The water and sewer funds have availability to take care of it.
Okay.
But this is just to do the study. Then we have to actually do the work. So what is the long-term plan for doing the work? That would be my question, because my notes for myself was, this sounds like a lot of money long-term. So
We have to have these answers. Eventually, we'll have to build a sewer treatment plant, for $25
I
million.
know, we've been talking about this. So are we talking, this is all going to come out of
Some of this.
water rates? I mean, where is this going to come from?
Yeah, the water rates have to
This
fund it.
first phase, so this first expansion that we're talking about, phase one, we have talked, Lisa's been looking at the numbers with us, and we are confident at this point, at this stage, that we will be able to cover phase one out of our current reserves, current water and sewer reserves. Again, 25 million is what we have in the overall, B projects. This is in the ballpark of, I don't even want to throw numbers out, but we're probably, and again, this is going to be such a range, you're going to say, why even throw this out there? $3 to $5 million is going to be on the high end, the $5 million. But I think that's what we're going to be looking at, and that is what that is our need, that's our current need, And then from there, we do have the evaluation of our future needs and are we gonna go to an EPA loan similar to our wells? That could be an option. Obviously, our rates, we have to continue to evaluate those, but right now, step one, we do have, I never wanna bring something to council without having the construction dollars to back that up and have a plan for those. We do have those planned for. Now, the conveyance system, I certainly don't think that we're gonna find problems that are so astronomical that we're not gonna be able to cover those, because we have still been doing televising. We have a good feel for our system. There's just, we all feel like there's just that one or two areas, and I know Joe Finley, who's been here over 30 years, he thinks there is this creek, somewhere we have this, when the creek hits a certain elevation, that there's this pipe that we just can't seem to put our hands on. And so we're all hoping for something like that, where we're able to make a huge impact to our system. He does, he thinks he has a pretty good idea of where it is, and again, Joe's been here over 30 years. Joe knows the system and knows the plant like the back of his hand. It's like his kids,
So by law, the water and sewer fund has to operate and fund itself. So as things occur and we need to expand, I mean, we'll certainly have to address rates that are appropriate, just like we addressed the water rates recently. We didn't raise rates on the sewer fund because we felt we were fine. We still have a decent amount of reserves in that, and so that's what we'll use for this. And as things go and as we need to build more, yeah, we'll have to have future conversations about sewer rates.
I need some clarification on one thing. You mentioned, when you were talking about the expansion for the treatment plant, you mentioned phase one, which I get, but then you said construction. This isn't gonna include construction of those head pumps, it's just the design in phase one only.
That is correct. This is the design of phase one, taking it up to where we can go to bid. That bid, again, we're anticipating, and again, I'm hoping I'm on the high side in that $3 to $5 million range.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure, because when I heard construction, I thought it was
So to expand on what the mayor just asked, is once we do the engineering to phase one, phase two, and we get to the construction phase, is any of this grant eligible?
It absolutely is. We have to evaluate whether or not we want to go that route. There are grants out there are loans out there. It absolutely is, but when you start getting into those steps, and I know Strand's here and they can speak much more eloquently than I'll be able to on this, but if you go and look for a grant and or an EPA loan, the requirements change for the design, and at this point, based on our current funding source, we are not planning on that. We are planning on keeping this in-house, paying for this in-house. It's similar to an IDOT project. If you wanted to go to IDOT and ask for money, they ask not just for, phase one, they ask for phase 1, 2, pre-phase, so you end up spending a lot more upfront.
So
We're trying to keep those costs down.
So is it fair to say that it most likely would not be grant eligible if we don't do the engineering to phase one, phase twos?
True. That is correct.
So we have to make a decision on whether we want to spend more up front to
That is
qualify
correct.
for an EPA grant, or just go the route you're suggesting.
That is
at the moment.
correct.
Now, is there, is it really just about saving money up front, or is it, like, what cost differences? Is it like an extra $300,000? Is it like, how? I think maybe it would be better if we understood the difference.
Sure,
in
I can
price.
certainly, we can certainly prepare those, and I don't know, Strand, I can look over at Mike and Dan this evening and ask them if they have any thoughts on it. I will tell you that for the second phase, the bigger portion of the expansion, that will definitely be done and must be done with that intent, with either a grant and or a secondary, funding source. So that will include all of our additional planning documents, all of the EPA required documents in order to be able to get grant and loan funding eligible.
I'm sorry, man, I'm confused, because it sounds like you are gonna do it that way in phase two.
In phase 2. So yeah, so phase 2, when we actually do the plant expansion,
Yeah.
when we do our $20 million project, our large plant expansion that's in the future,
Yeah.
yes.
Oh, you're talking phase two, not of this treatment head expansion, you're talking about the big plant
That is
expansion.
correct.
That's, yeah, okay, I understand.
We've been very selective as to what we've gone out for loan, because we've had the excess reserves to be able to fund pretty much everything we've been doing with the water mains,
Yeah,
right?
okay.
Going out for an IEPA loan on the water mains just doesn't make sense if you've got that cash sitting there. So we've leveraged the money that we've had
Yeah.
and used the IEPA low-interest loans for the projects like the well facility, the iron filtration, those big plants, okay? So we're leveraging the money we have right now properly so that we're not spending a lot of extra money in design and getting ready just so that we can go out for a loan for those things.
I understand the loan, but you mentioned a grant. That's a difference.
Well, yeah, so, I mean, low-interest loans are great, but, you know, to be honest with you, I would much rather spend a couple of more dollars up front to get us at the doorstep of the $20 million expansion, which may not happen for 10 years, 15 years, but at least we'll have the engineering, and the engineering costs today gonna be less than the engineering costs tomorrow, okay? And every grant we've ever applied for from a construction standpoint always required the phase 1, phase 2 engineering, because if we don't do the phase 1, kind of expand this to get us to the doorstep to the 20 million, there's gonna be 9 people 10 years from now, they're gonna have this conversation, and it's gonna cost the taxpayers more money than it is now. I don't, did that make any sense?
Oh, it does. So I guess if you can supply us with a clear number of what it would cost to design this, to make it grant eligible, we're not talking about loans, we're talking about grant eligible, that would help us make a decision on what, like, okay, if it's $500,000 more, or if it's, $50,000 more, that's gonna help us make a better
So-
decision.
Right, so for the overall plant design is probably, not probably, it is $1.5 million to $2 million. So we would be talking about adding to this.
Because part of this discussion too is we don't even know if the EPA is gonna allow, is that a true statement, it would even allow us to expand in that area anyway? But we won't know that until the engineer, they're not gonna be able to make that decision until they see the engineering.
Technically, that's correct.
And I'd much rather get in the door now before EPA regulations change sometime in the future, and they always change, and they always make these unfunded mandates, and I would much rather get this stuff done before an unfunded mandate, of which could be anything.
So that is a facilities planning document, so that's the document that we have really not included in this. Now, that is not just looking at the initial, that is looking at the overall. What I would ask this evening would be that these be considered. That is a secondary document. I would be more than happy, and I'm sure Strand would be more than happy to look at, and we can bring that next phase, not the next phase, that's the wrong terminology, but that design package back to council. That would be in addition to this, regardless of, the decision tonight.
So can we have two things next meeting then? The first part of what you're asking for, the 300,000, whatever it was.
211.
211. Yeah, okay,
Correct.
so, okay, can you bring, I'm okay with an action item on that, or, whatever. Well, it's spending money, so it'd have to be an action item. But can you also go ahead and bring us the second part of the conversation to the committee of the whole?
Sure.
Next time around, okay?
And the second part being just,
The second part being the expansion of thought to go ahead and eventually making us grant eligible. And, the elephant in the room is the $20 million expansion of the system that we all know is gonna have to be done, okay? And, And we don't have to make the decision to go forward with that anytime in the immediate future, but at least whomever is sitting up here at, it's either 2 weeks or 2 years or 5 years from now, at least we'll have something that, that'll be our baseline.
Yeah, but let me just, because I'm still slightly confused on one
Yes.
point. So you're saying that this $211,000 helps with new pumps, right? To take on this flow that comes down.
Correct.
And that we're going to design it, in this 211, in such a way that it won't be eligible for a grant. But when we get to the larger part of the plant, we'll design it so it is. So my question to you is this. It's like if I were buying, well, I don't want to make a stupid analogy. All I'm saying is we can still make a decision on spending, instead of 211 that's not eligible for a grant, even on this smaller component of it, if you come back and tell me, well, you know what, if you want to design it so it's grant eligible, it's going to cost us, $280, that's the number I'm talking about. I get that you're going to come back with a design for the big picture, but this is clearly a step. And so how much more will it cost to do that step and get it grant eligible?
Didn't you say it's $1 million to design the plant, correct?
To design the overall plant.
But that's not these pumps itself.
Not
This
the
is like
pumps
this is
itself.
like I'm putting new tires on my car, phase one, but I know I got to redo the whole car, right? So I'm asking if I can get grant for the tires. And so if I buy the right kind of tires, it may cost me a little more, but that's what I'm coming at. How much more do I have to spend to make this phase simple, small addition grant eligible? That's the number I'm looking for.
Essentially, I think that's the facilities planning document that we were talking about. So that is something I will definitely bring the information back on. Now, again, just to be completely upfront and make sure everybody understands this, the EPA, the way their primary funding mechanism, the way they help is that low interest loan. Now, there are grants out there, again, but it is not anywhere near the type of grants, the 80-20 grants, those types of things. It's power savings, it's blower savings, it's pump potential savings in power and energy. So the grants, I just want to make sure, because that 20 million, realistically, the best thing we're going to be able to do is probably get that low interest loan. Now there's potential. I just don't want to set this up. It's not like there's a great STP program out there where we come to them with a $5 million project. We've done phase 1 and phase 2. We walk in and we say, hey, can you share in that money 80-20? We'll give you $1 million, you give us $4 million. They don't have those kind of great programs.
It's almost more performance-based grants, where if you spend a little more, you
Correct.
design it a little more efficient, you pay more for more efficient, equipment, but you're gonna get some kind of grant to help subsidize
I
it for a
understand.
period of time.
And Brent, I'm okay with that. If you come back and tell me, Steve, you're beating your head against the wall, we can spend 280 for these pumps, but you're probably either not going to get the grant, or you're going to have these crazy pumps that nobody,
I think Brent's already telling you that.
Dan.
Mike, here's our sewer expert.
Yeah.
Okay, so is anything that what you've heard, such as, spending a couple more bucks, you guys do this is what you do every single day. Is anything that what we've said make any sense, or tell us what made sense and what didn't make sense?
Yeah, everything you said makes sense. The cities, and even if it didn't make sense to you, it made sense to me. Your concern, the city's concern right now is they want to move forward on this this pumping issue, because that'll certainly help you during these wet weather events, and we're trying to expedite that. So what you're asking about is we could go through that process, which would then set you up to be ready to go to the IEPA to have this funded if you so chose to do so. Yeah, there's an additional cost because they make you, the paperwork is extremely long and tedious. So that all does make sense. There is a cost difference, and we can provide that to you. I will say the one concern I do have, though, is that the IEPA works on a funding cycle. So right now, actually, I would say in January, they're going to make a decision of who they're going to give money to next July 2020. if you go down the process of trying to fund this pumping station, you will probably not get funding to do it until July of 2021 at the earliest, because it will be there at 12 to 18 months for reviewing that report. So what we're deciding, what we're trying to do is, let's jump on this pumping thing. We can handle it ourselves. Let's deal with it. And then in the background, I'm going to do that bigger study. I'm going to get it in front of them. I'm going to let them have their 12 months. 2021, we can make a decision, do I want the funding? So it really does come down to a timing thing.
That makes sense. So next time, just chime in and say, stop talking. I can straighten this out right
It
now.
was an interesting conversation. so.
All right, thanks, Chance. Is that, are you?
I'm good.
I was trying to cut Brent off, too.
So my only one question is, at this when we design a plant, are we designing a Cadillac? Are we designing, what are these flow levels? Are we planning on future
7.
Lockport growth? What is the plan now? Are we trying to just take care of these wet weather situations that happened this last month? Are we treating this like there was a 100-year rain? Or what kind of, how much money do we need to put in to accomplish what we want to accomplish?
The pumps that we have been discussing would be for the ultimate build-out of going from about a 5 MGD, which we have today, design flow, to a 7. That 7 is based on the information that we have, best available information. It's not the CMAP 65, 70,000 people that, that Lockport may someday have. We're trying to be realistic with it, and we're trying to evaluate, and based on everything that we've kind of talked about internally, and again, with Strand, we've come to that 7 MGD. Now that is in addition to, Bonnie Bray still has 2.2 MGD. We're only at like a 0.9 or 1 is what we actually are utilizing there, so we have some excess capacity there. So but to answer your question very specifically, the pumps that we are putting in are not to pump to something that we'll never be able to treat. EPA does not allow that, and I know Dan and Mike would keep us in check. Believe me, I want to put pumps in there that would blow it out of the water, but unfortunately the EPA won't let us.
Does everybody know what an MGD is?
Million gallons per day.
Yeah, got it.
Makes sense now that you said.
Not the other thing.
No.
Is it also possible for the next meeting then, Lisa, for you to tell us how much money we have for the water and sewer fund? And how much, like if I'm doing the quick math here, are we trying to do a 10-year loan, a 20-year loan, a 30 loan?
What they offer is 20 or 40-year loans, right? They've gone up higher now. So you take out initially
30 now.
30,
but if
20 or 30.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I looked at, just 30-year, I mean, that'd be like, I don't know, $60, $70 a month for 30 years, or not a month, a year for every resident, so $5, $6 for 30 years, if it had no interest on it. Let's just go. 2% interest. Okay, so I gotta do some more math, but
I can easily do that
yeah,
math
if you
for
can kind of draw that out so we can kind of see.
We talked about this when we did the CIP, and it was approved last year.
Yep.
What we did was we raised our water rates, only the water rates, for 5% for 5 years. And we talked about at that point, once we hit that 5th year, we would then have our water mains built out, changed out. We would be sitting in a good shape from the water system, right? So we're focusing right now on the water, knowing that it was gonna take us another maybe 10, maybe 15 years before we were gonna need this plant. So then we would switch that from the water rate to the sewer rate to start to achieve money, okay? And to hold that money aside so we can not just take out a loan for the full amount, but we can make a down payment and then supplement that with a loan for 20 or 30 years, okay? That's gonna take us into many, many years into our future, what we're doing to that plant. We don't need it right now. What we need is a fix to a deal with the problems that we have, and that's what Brent's just saying. Let's fix these things, and it's still gonna buy us more time before we really need this new plant, right? We don't know, right? Next year is when EPA comes back and reevaluates our plant to tell us whether we get another, 10 years?
Bonnie Bray.
That's for the Bonnie Bray?
That's for Bonnie Bray in 2020, yes.
So we are going to develop a mechanism to start saving some more money, all right? But we want to get through all of our water system first. So what we're working on is just immediate needs here in the sewer and trying to address that. And we will eventually shift base, and we will come back to council to say, let's address this and pre-plan. We know it's coming. Let's start to pre-plan. But if you want me to chart out for you a whole schedule of hey, this is the year we think we're gonna need that plan, this is the year we're gonna start increasing our rates, how much we're gonna accumulate, how much we'll take out in a loan, including interest over 20, 30 years, I'm more than happy to do that for you.
Because there's gonna be other projects too that fall under this category, correct? Or is this the only yeah, so there's a whole, right,
We've got a whole CIP of what we think we need to do.
for, under just water and sewer. So that's why I wanna see how much we,
We're working-
yeah,
we're
okay.
working towards
Because they're
these
gonna
goals.
be big numbers then. I mean, that's how, my
I
note
don't
to
think
myself
any of
was,
it's
it's a lot of money.
unachievable. I don't think that we're going to blow our residents out of the water with water rates or sewer rates that they can't afford. We are absolutely going to be mindful of that and to make sure that we're doing this properly. And us talking about it today, if we don't need that plant for another 10 to 15 years, and we're talking about today, that's wonderful, right? And if we don't talk about it for 3 more years, I think we can sit tight on 3 more years and not try to. And that's one of the reasons why we didn't raise both the water and the sewer. We were mindful that our residents could only afford so much, and we wanted to keep our water rates still comparable with our other municipalities. So it was a mindful choice that we made a year and a half ago to just raise the water and not raise the sewer yet, okay? So we will come back to that, and we will have that conversation. So I think we're jumping ahead of the gun a couple of years, but I'm more than happy. It won't take me long to come up with an analysis like that.
The only reason I ask that is sometimes every time when people look at the water and sewer, that little surcharge, they start asking, why can't we just have Lake Michigan water? Why can't we have another company? So I want to be able to say, here's what if we do our plan, here's what we're at, and here, if we go to this plan. So I'm just wanting to know long-term then, because there's still a lot of people who ask, why can't we connect to Lake Michigan?
Well,
I know it's gonna cost more money, but this way we can.
That's a whole nother
I'm just
discussion.
saying, I don't want to find out that would have been a different alternative we could have gone.
Sure. Well, of course, it doesn't have anything doing with the water going into the treatment plant, but I guess if that's something you want to talk about, Catherine, I would suggest, bringing it up under new business sometime or something like that, and if we can get some preparation on it. But obviously, today, I appreciate your patience, everyone, as I'm trying to understand what's grant eligible, what's wise to go for a grant, what's not. So at this point, I guess we'll just put it on as an action item. And some of the other requests about looking at what's grant eligible for the big stuff, I think is be fine. So are we good with an action item then? Okay. Okay. Last thing, New Avenue.
PW-4 this evening is New Avenue and State Street Roundabout. This is a pre-phase 1 design engineering project. So pre-phase 1, this is the step before phase 1 engineering. So this is something that we are in the very, very preliminary early stages of evaluation. As you can see on the left, the current condition. Again, this is New Avenue and State Street. On the right would be our potential intersection with the roundabout. This roundabout, the reason that we're considering that, just some facts that are out there on roundabouts, and this is information that was provided this is one of the reasons that IDOT really likes these. Compared to signalized intersections, roundabouts reduce fatal collisions by 90% and injury collisions by 75%. Again, this is according to the Federal Highway Administration. So one of the things that IDOT really looks for in these is that safety. So what we're looking for is the safety improvements with the increased truck traffic. As everybody knows, we have a significant amount of truck traffic that makes its way downtown State Street, 9th Street, and it's not slowing down. It's not something that's going away. So what we're looking for is a way to give those trucks some alternate routes to keep them away from our downtown, give them the ability to make safe turns, give them the ability to not feel like they're holding up traffic to make a right or a left, and give them a safe alternative. This condition that we're showing here, this is not exact. This is, again, this is a mock-up of what it may look like. But what we're asking for this evening would be pre-phase 1. Pre-phase 1 is so preliminary, it's not, it's...
To see if this is even...
Feasibility, right?
Feasibility.
And this was just photoshopped in, so...
Well, let me expand on this. Let me give you guys some background. So clearly, we all have to deal with increased traffic. So trying to think about it from a number of different fronts is where we've been working with this. So As you guys know, we're working on extending the queue as you come over the bridge, that left turn queue on 9th. So working with CN to put the new signalization so that can happen. That's one way of getting traffic to flow better. We've all looked, we're in phase 2 now of the center lane along 9th Street where it's 2 lanes so that the left cars or the left turn cars are out of the way and traffic can flow better. There's a number of other things too that we've been trying to explore. For instance, Ben and I had a meeting today with Mayor Noak, and we talked about looking at 135th Street to be an east-west route. It already has a 4-lane bridge. It already has mostly 4-lane road, but it is totally in Romeoville. Well, the bridge is in Romeoville's jurisdiction. They're responsible for it. So we had a good, candid conversation about what would it take for us to see if we could get the state to make that State Route 8, for instance, and make it a state, designated east-west route. Of course, Romeoville has some concerns about the 53 intersection, which we would have to be sensitive to. But at least we had a good conversation about taking the next step at that. So that's another way of trying to alleviate some of the traffic off of the 9th Street Bridge. But even this would help with traffic, not just with trucks. And one of the things that anybody who knows, if you've ever taken a 135th Street Bridge and you're coming down in the Lockport, if there's 3 or 4 people making a left turn on the state, you're going to be stuck behind them, and it can back up. This would keep traffic flow continuous, so you wouldn't have that backup anymore. So even just for vehicles, it helps tremendously with people being able to come down New Avenue and flow right onto State Street. So this was an idea that, we just floated, and yeah, this is my schlocky Photoshop work, right? So I said, Ben, is this even possible, right? So it's just another thing we want to explore. But some other good things too, just FYI, that, Mayor Noak and I talked about were, if he and I can start making some more aggressive pitches to the state. For instance, one of the things that we'd been trying to get were no left turns signage on some of the signalization. For instance, when people make these, trucks, for instance, make a left turn onto 151st Street, we have signs on 151st Street that say you can't enter, but let's be honest, by the time these guys turn and they see it, they've already committed. I've asked IDOT in the past for us to be able to put these kind of no-turn signs on the actual signal, so when you're sitting there in the left turn lane, you know not to do it before you even do it. They've said no, which makes no sense, but I said, John, if you and I can go down to Springfield and start petitioning these things, at a higher level, which he was willing to do. So that's one thing we'd like to try to approach. We talked about getting some traffic studies that we would both help fund together, perhaps, about 159th Street to help make the case for 135th Street. So we'll try to do a whole number of things. And so, again, what this is just, can this be an option? And at this point, we're just looking to see if it would even fit, this idea, in that space. So it's kind of just another step of what we're trying to do to help alleviate traffic.
Yeah, that's not necessarily the case. We just dropped it in. There's actually quite a bit of right-of-way to the west, and that little pie-shaped corner, actually half of that greenery is all ours too. So,
So we may be able to shift all of it
yeah,
west.
hopefully we wouldn't be able to impact that home at all. That was just something we threw in. But whoever that guy is at home, stay home. But,
Yeah. The only thing I know for roundabouts to work is if they don't have right angles coming into them, they're problematic. So that's
think
why
of
we're
the-
taking it to the next step and not a schlocky graphic designer doing it. So,
And Joanne, we could put a welcome to Lockport sign right in the middle of that thing. Right? Beautify that thing.
okay. All right. Any other thoughts, questions on this then? Yeah.
So if it happened, who would pay for it?
Well,
Is
again,
that
that's
not
one of these
states-
things that. Well, and that was the other thing that
that the
Mayor
state
Noak
road,
and I
right?
talked about is getting things like this on a capital
State
improvement
loves
project.
these.
It would be a state-funded
State
thing.
loves these.
Yeah,
These are
state.
both state routes, actually.
Yes, New Avenue and 171 are state projects, but just talking about getting these kind of things onto the capital bill as we move forward.
It would be 80-20 grand.
I can confirm, IDOT loves these. I mean, they try to use them. The only problem is, you're realistic, Joanne, they suck up a lot of yards. I mean, so most people don't have the land to put them in. So they're going to find out, we might do a study, and they might, I mean.
It may not work.
Yeah.
It might not work, because
Know that until we go down the path.
No, but IDOT loves them because of their safety, and they like to promote them, but you do need a lot of land to put those in.
But it looks like there is some empty land, on the other sides, which, if that's our
could be shifted over. We just,
Yes,
we just
this-
threw it in there.
All right, so are we okay with,
So this is $46,500 for V3 would be the request this evening.
Yeah, let's do it.
so that's the initial design concept for it?
46.
JR, do you know what those cost about to make roundabouts, or no? Even on yeah, roundabout how much? Because even at 80/20, that's still gonna be a couple million maybe, or?
Oh.
No, I mean, well, one, you don't have four ways there, you only have three. I mean, that's gonna change the price. I mean, it varies. So, no, I do not know the price. Yes, so we're.
Yeah, we could, and actually V3 did that one, so they could give us an idea what they spent.
Exactly.
We'll make sure they give us that information in their report. Sure.
All right, so are we okay with the consent on this, or what do you guys want to do?
Well, we're spending money, so why don't we, I don't know, I don't really care.
So,
Consent's fine.
all right, we'll do a consent. Okay. Anything else under new business?
Could we have that as an action item and just hear the dollar amount from Orland of what it would cost?
Sure.
I mean, I don't think it'll change the opinion then, but just an idea of how much it costs. If it's
And again, it would be
80/20,
a state-funded project. Okay.
well, it still could be an action item, and then we'll,
But it's no problem, we'll put it on an action item, please.
same thing.
Okay. All right, does anybody else have any new business stuff? Okay. That's some cards from Donna and Jackie. So why don't you guys come on up and you get to speak. First card I have is Donna, so please come on up to the podium.
Okay, I'm, in the, addressing of the video gaming, I see it addresses, C1 and C2 licenses and doesn't address Class A1 licenses. Another issue I'd like to discuss is the, no more than 5 machines at an establishment when the state is allowing 6 machines. If I am going to sell my business, will the new owner be able to get gaming machines?
Okay, do you want to just give all your questions and then I'll respond on it?
Sure.
Okay.
And then, we're requested a fee for applying for a license for an application fee when we already have an application fee license. And why are not all the current licenses grandfathered in? And that the proposed, not issuing new licenses for businesses that have the existing licenses already are gonna tremendously decrease the value of our establishments without the gaming, the video gaming licenses.
Okay. Is that everything, Donna?
Everything.
Okay. So, can you tell me what business that you have? or-
Shooters.
Shooters, okay. So the way we discussed in this is that as far as like businesses that have the Class A liquor licenses, because they're 21 and older establishments, that they would be eligible for the 6 machines. That wasn't going to be a problem. So, and then also any kind of screening requirements that we were looking at doing for the C2s or the C, where the restaurants where there's 21 and under patrons, while there'll be, the Gaming Commission will work to help find screening and stuff like that as opposed to just the red velvet rope that they have now. When it came to the A licenses, the council decided we're not going to require any of that excess screening because you guys are already 21 and over. So as far as that goes, all the A licenses are exempt from those rules. Basically, you're gonna operate exactly the way you've been operating. I would think that the only possibility that might change is if the Gaming Commission comes up with thoughts on outdoor signage. Like, I think some of that was in discussion, and we've all agreed, like, look, let's let the independent commission come up with these rules, and, you know, maybe that they don't want illuminated outdoor, you know, signs that say gaming, or maybe reduction, but that may be the only thing I could think of that might be affected, is how outside signage is for gaming, for advertising. The application fee, correct me, Sonny, is that only if you're doing it first time?
Yes, so it's a $500 initial application fee for all applicants. After that, there won't be any application fee.
But for everybody who has one, they don't need to apply.
No, they do. So it's a new application fee because we've initiated the Video Gaming Commission, everything else, we need time to review it.
So it's a one-time?
Yeah, it's
and
a one-time.
It's not every year or
yeah,
annual?
It's not every year.
Okay,
So,
all right.
very similar to the liquor license application fees.
Okay, all right. So the use of it, you know, is grandfathered, to be able to continue with what you're doing. And like I said, the A licenses probably have the least amount of, you operate as you are and add another machine and no screening. Now, I understand the concern that's come up about, like, well, man, if I go to sell this business, you know, it's not gonna sell for as much. So, let me try to give the perspective from where we're at. So, you know, right now we have a number of bars that only serve alcohol and there's no food. You know, one of the struggles that we have with the chief is that it's also our highest rates of calls. People get very inebriated. You had somebody chasing somebody with a hammer. Somebody got stabbed at Stella's. These things happen when people are just drinking and just drinking. And so trying to bring a food element into these areas that help kind of temper that over intoxication thing. Now, we haven't said, oh, we're just going to make all these bars put food in there. We tried to be sensitive. And so what we thought was this. It's like, if you guys want to sell your bar the same way you started it, which was with no gaming, nobody started that business here that had gaming. It came afterwards. And so you guys are able to sell the business exactly the same way you guys purchased it, which is as just a license. But in order to qualify in the future, if a new owner wanted it, we would ask them to have a C license, which means they have to have some kind of food element. And again, it doesn't have to be extravagant. We talked about it. We're not looking for, you know, a giant kitchen. It's like, I've been in, you know, one bar in, what is it, Geneva. They've got that, is it Soderheim? It's that Swedish bar. The kitchen is about the size of a telephone booth, and there's a guy back there making cheeseburger soup and sandwiches, and it's fairly low-key, but it does add a food element into it, which helps temper some of that empty stomach, drinking too much kind of thing, and that's where we were looking at with that. Also, ultimately, it helps, I think, make it more accessible to everybody. Instead of having X amount of 21 and over only businesses in state, which we're trying to make more accessible for everyone, it does allow people to go in there. For instance, we go into that solder home place with my kids to get soup in the afternoon. Certainly, we're not going to bring my kids in there at 9 o'clock at night because everything changes, and that's okay. But at least it makes it more accessible throughout. So, again, the thought was, it's like, how can we add a kind of food element into these businesses without being over the top, but at the same time encourage it into the future. So that's why we took the A's out, and for anybody who wants it in the future, you need to have that C element, you need to have a food element. And so that was the reasoning behind that. So hopefully that explanation makes sense. Would you have any outstanding questions on what I said, or?
Actually, I do. As far as the selling of the establishment, if the establishment is a corporation and you sell the corporation, the video gaming goes along with the corporation. Is that not correct?
Well, no, every licenses are all, like, for instance, a liquor license will be available, but if somebody were to purchase it, they'd still have to apply for a liquor license. They would still have to go through the screening, go through the process, the state, and they may not, it could be a corporation.
The new officer would have to do that, correct?
And that's
Yes.
a different thing. If you change corporate officer, you still have to get the corporate officer approved, but the license still stays with the corporation. Yep.
Okay, that was what the point I was trying to make.
And so one of the other things too we did, Donna, was we separated gaming from alcohol, because one of the struggles we were having was gaming was just overwhelming every establishment in town. Everybody who, sold a cheeseburger said, hey, can I squeeze gaming into here? Or can I have a liquor license for gaming? And I'm like, ugh, the idea that it just automatically comes with liquor. I'm up here telling people, no, I won't give you a liquor license, when I felt like, okay, I don't want to be the sole person making that decision. Let me spread it out, and that's why we came up with the gaming commission, so that there could be another venue for it. Now, I may say, guys, I don't think that what you're proposing, not meaning you, like somebody would come to me and want to open, I literally was having people come to me and say, hey, I want to open a restaurant, but I want liquor so I can have gaming. I'm like, we're not interested in any more gaming parlors. I am interested in a restaurant. And that usually people would walk away because they wanted a gaming parlor. But other folks, when they would ask me, and I'd be like, I don't think it's a good, I'll give you an example. La Michoacana, the new taco place, floated the idea of having liquor so they could have gaming. I'm like, Alex, it's a terrible idea. You got ice cream in there, for crying out loud. I'm going to have gaming machines in there? It doesn't make any sense. So I either was going to just deny him a liquor license completely, or if he would agree with me verbally, say, okay, I won't do it. So that was all wishy-washy. I didn't like that. So I said, let's have some rules, and also have other people, like an independent gaming commission, be able to help insert themselves if, let's say Alex, like, well, I don't like your answer, Mayor. I'm going to go appeal to the gaming commission. At least it gave another opportunity for it to happen. And so I guess it's not directly to your question, but about does gaming go with it? Gaming doesn't automatically go with it. Just like in any business, we separated it from the liquor license, and a new person would have to apply for it. So even if they become a C, they still would have to apply for the gaming license, but at least they would meet the requirements by being a C.
Do you think that they could possibly apply for a facade grant? Can we change the facade grant? Because I do feel bad for these women that want to sell their business.
What does facade grants have to do with anything?
Well, I'm saying, can we use that, can we somehow change the facade grant so maybe that $10,000 can be used for a kitchen? So then it'll put it up to the C. We have money there. Okay.
Well, that's interesting. Well, I would float it this way, because obviously we're just talking out loud right now. It's an interesting idea. If it went under a code compliance grant, and that were something we were willing to do, I would say that that would be a good idea if the existing business owners were willing to do it, like before they sell it. Like, I'm gonna turn the place around now with the kitchen and have it prepared. Maybe that's one way of doing it, as opposed to just a new investor coming to town wanting to buy it. And I'm just talking out loud. It's the first time you floated this idea.
But then if the new investor buys it, knowing that he'd get a $10,000 grant,
Yeah.
would also be good too, because it's new ideas, new energy, new.
Yeah. No, I don't, that's actually an interesting idea. What are our code compliance grants? I know what our facade grant numbers are, but what's our code compliance grant?
It's hard to say that it's not in compliance. It's more of incentive to come into compliance versus, like, if code compliance, you don't have a
Fire
porch or fire
sprinklers
sprinkler,
and
and you want to come
alarms.
into compliance with the current
You can add it to
code,
that.
you can use that grant. So we would have to obviously come up with the parameters
Rules
of
and
that.
guidelines, is it 50% match up to 10,000 or whatever it is?
What's the budget?
Yeah. Well, you know what? We can use the gaming fund money that's there now. I actually think it's a pretty good idea, because I truly would like to encourage them to have food elements. And so if it's a matter of, going in that direction with it, like build out the kitchenettes or whatever you need, I think it's an interesting idea.
Because it's gonna take about $10,000.
No, it wouldn't be facade, but she's just talking about like helping. And so I think it's a,
Well, I know at one point we did discuss helping the,
we talked about helping people come into compliance for screening. And so, but that's different.
Right.
This is the, look, here's the one thing, Donna, and it's like, when gaming first came into town, there were no rules, right? And so that's why I suddenly found myself being bombarded with, you know, everybody from a guy selling tacos to ice cream who wants gaming, right? So that's why we said, oh, we need to have rules. The problem is when you have rules after gaming's been in place for 6 years, it suddenly gets a little messy because it's like, okay, how are we going to deal with existing people? And so that's one of the directions that we gave to, or at least I gave to the people that were on the gaming commission. I'm like, look, you don't need to go in there like tyrants, you know, for the, not you, but the C2s that need screening. It's like, do the best you can to come up with the ultimate goal, which is like, would be a separate room with little flapper doors. Not everybody's going to be able to pull that off, and we understand that. And so trying to be sensitive to adding, you know, knowing that we're setting up rules 6 years into this. So if that also includes the idea of helping, you know, basically we got about 5 bars, that helping them build out the kitchen, I think that is helpful. It does, like, again, I think that meets the goal of making more businesses more inclusive to the entire population. It helps with some of the law enforcement issues that we have by, you know, bringing in a food element and tempering it. I think it's a good idea. I'm happy to explore that a little bit more if you guys want. Like, we could look at, maybe get an idea of like how much.
But it's not going to be the existing. I mean, if Bar A is trying to sell to Steve Strite, it's like Steve wants to design his building. I'm going to buy that building. I'm going to design it the way I want it.
I personally would say it either way. I would say if an existing person wanted to do it now,
okay, yeah, well,
or if somebody wanted to
open it up for both.
do it.
Okay, as long as it's open up for both. But yeah, because you might say, oh, I don't want it over there. I wanted it over here as part of the purchase.
But there also has to be a time frame they're going to keep the bar if we give them money to upgrade it.
Same
It
like
can't-
we would with
the
the other
facade
things, you
and-
do a lien for 3 years
Right,
and stuff.
so there has to be that time frame where you don't get it and sell it the next year. You
Right,
have
some
to hold
parameters.
it
We
for
can work on
3 or
that.
5 years or whatever it is.
It would be a self-funded kind of thing, because I think Darren had me look this up the other day. What the actual language says is about downtown development improvements. It was kind of vague, the way the gaming funds are kind of restricted to downtown development. This certainly would be within that purview.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm totally open to having that discussion, and so
can work on
why don't
that.
we get together with staff and we'll explore how we can make that kind of grant eligible to build that out a little bit. Okay. Anything else, Donna?
No, I think that's it for me.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
1605?
Shooters over on Division.
Street, yeah.
Okay.
All right. Debbie, I had your card up next if you want to talk. Debbie, Paradise Bay. She here still? I don't have my glasses on. Oh, okay, sorry. And what about Karen?
My name is Karen Shimoleski. I own Uncle Richie's place for the last 27 years. I think one of the issues that I have is I think that this amendment to gaming is getting clouded with what your intentions are, say, maybe towards, okay, now like, say news to me today was you wanted to bring food elements into A1 and B2 license holders. That's separate from, you're saying that, oh, if you add food element, now you can have gaming, but if you don't, you can't have gaming. But what if you wanted to sell your, say if I wanted to sell my bar as an A1 license, there's nothing that is saying I have to, as a potential buyer, that I would have to add a food element to my license to get a liquor license. It would just be if I wanted gaming.
Correct.
That doesn't make any sense.
It
makes no sense,
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor.
Okay, but it's
It's not
fine. It doesn't make any
logical.
sense. Like, what doesn't make sense? It's just something of trying to find a way to encourage, like, some of these elements, like, say, food into our bars. Most towns of, like, kind of the old school bar where you just go in for alcohol is kind of faded over time. Most things are taverns where, you know, people can access food and it's open for basically any age group. But we didn't, you know, have no intention of, like, just mandating that, much like Chicago did a number of years ago. They got rid of all the bars. Everybody had to have food. That's not something I'm interested in doing. But we were trying to find a way to encourage it over time, and that was the mindset behind it. You guys can still sell the bar exactly the same way you bought it.
I understand that. Well, but one of the things in Sonny's letter was one of the pros for this amendment was sets local control of the VG machines in the city with additional protection to limit the exposure of the video gaming machines to minors, and creates a VG commission that can better limit machines to appropriate liquor licensed establishments.
So why have it? Why have it
By
in?
changing my venue to a C2 license, then I am saying now I have minors entering my building.
Sure. And you're
So that's exposing more minors to video gaming, which really, if you ask me, should be restricted to A1, B2 licenses, where you don't have minors in your business.
I agree, but the overall decision of the council was that they wanted to leave options open for Cs in the future. And so, in a compromise, I said, that's fine, because I would have capped it and had no possibility. That was kind of my mindset. I'm like, we have 18 establishments right now. I'm ready to just cap it and be done. But that wasn't the will of the council. The will of the council was, well, what if we get some other kind of, great restaurant that says, oh, we can't bring this unless we have gaming. They wanted options for those restaurants. So it's like, fine. So in an effort to compromise, it was like, all right, we'll allow the possibility of Cs to have it as long as it goes through the gaming commission and they make a good case for it. I agree. I don't particularly like them in any of the establishments, Karen.
The resolution was still to limit the number of locations to have machines. Capped at 18.
Yes.
With the possibility to increase the cap with this commission.
Yes. That was part of the compromise, which was to say, hey, look,
I guess
we'd
I
like to
still
have
don't
our
understand
options.
the logic going back to A1, B2 holders then. 'Cause then
Yeah.
You're saying, okay, existing customers, or say, existing businesses that have been here for a heck of a lot longer than some of the places that we're not even, they're still in not in a developmental state yet. You don't even have the offer of somebody coming into town. It's like, and then the potential revenue to improve downtown, it's like, but we're gonna screw the downtown owners that have been here for forever.
Yeah.
And there's a very, very real impact to not only, say, my retail value, but my total bottom line and the city's bottom line.
Sure.
And the city stands to lose over $75,000 a year.
If you lose gaming, and that's
lose
fine.
gaming.
And I was like, that's fine with me. It's like, we still haven't even spent the money that we have for gaming. It's sitting in a fund. So it's not like, for me personally, had the issue, but there were other council members that didn't want to lose the revenue, so therefore, that was the compromise to allow future possibilities for gaming, which is okay. I said, that's fine, I can deal with that. At least for me, and I think some of the other council members felt like, fine, we'll compromise on that space. But as far as like, I still go back to Karen, no one's diminished. Ultimately, Karen, gaming fell into your lap through nothing you did. The state one day decided, hey, if you got booze, you can have gaming. And so it's like, wow, it's like a windfall. It just fell into your lap. It wasn't any investment you made. Even when these guys come in and they put the machines, they bring the equipment. You don't pay for the equipment. Everything was just handed. And so it's this thing where they just tied it to liquor. That was the state's decision. They could have tied it to, if you own a brake shop, you can have gaming. If you sell dresses, you can have gaming. But they didn't. The only people that benefited from this windfall were people that sold alcohol. So that's great. And you've made money on it, and I'm glad. I think it helped, Jackie purchased the building. That's great. That's all good things. But ultimately, it was something that the state just dumped into everybody's lap. And so no one's going to change the investment that you made. You all bought J license or inherited it, or that's what you guys, the business you had when you started. And so the idea that that's what you would sell, nobody's taken away from anything of your original investment. The gaming was just plopped down into your laps. Okay, that's fine. Now, I understand the hypocrisy of like, well, you're asking it to be a C ultimately. Okay, We had a draft where it was just A licenses on there, but had some council members didn't want A licenses. So it's like, okay, we'll get the C back on there. So this was a debate that went on for, it's the longest thing I think we've ever debated at this council. We went over like 6 weeks with this thing. So, you know, while I appreciate you here after the vote, you know, we had all this time and it was in the papers. We talked about it forever. But ultimately, this is how we're trying to find ways to, and while it's not perfect, but I didn't want to be so oppressive that, you know, we're trying to shut a bar down, but we're giving them opportunities through using even some of that gaming money. And now we're even talking about some grants to help add a food element into it so that we can kind of bring all these things. We're not here to shut people down, and I like this idea of helping with the grant. So I'm trying to be sensitive to it, Karen, at the same time kind of limit what was becoming just everything had gaming in town. So this is the compromises we came up with.
Personally, I personally don't think that gaming in a family restaurant is something that our community really wants to do. If you go out to dinner with your family, you know, I would expect your family to sit and have dinner, not dad go off into a separate little room and play poker machine while the rest of the family's eating dinner.
Karen,
If
you know what?
Dad's
I agree.
gonna leave the house and he's going to the bar and he's gonna gamble for a little while.
Yep.
Well, then you expect that, you either accept it or you don't. But to say that is an A1 license, now I need to be a C2 license, now I open up my doors to minors.
Possibly. It doesn't mean everyone's going to chime in there with their kids. It's still going to be the whole marketing and how you propose it.
That's not something that I would choose to do. I don't want minors in my business.
Yeah, and you can
not a place
you
for
can still make it a 21 and over. You don't have to make it so that it's accessible to everyone. It's just an option if you have food. You don't have to make it 21 and under. You could still, even if you guys add a kitchenette, it still can be a 21 and over establishment, Donna. It's not that you have to, or Karen, I'm sorry. It's not that you have to do it. It's just that it's a possibility where that opens it up more. Then it becomes more just like any kind of tavern that, you know, people can go into usually during the day. But I agree with you on the other part. I didn't want it in any restaurants either. My desire was to have it, just to be done with it. But it was a compromise that we had to make to get everybody on board on this council. I agree. I would have rather not had it in the restaurants. That's why if anybody wants to do it in the future, it's going to have to be a clear-cut, separate room with little flapper doors. It's going to be not the old, hey, you got a red velvet rope that they have now, which I thought was inappropriate. I agree with you, but it's like, and I'd pull it right now, but that's not the overall will of the council. They wanted to have that option. That was the compromise we came up with.
I guess I just see a lot of potential for minors gambling and or drinking in establishments because you don't have to have a parent with you to go into a restaurant to get a cheeseburger and then somebody in the group has, and to me it's like, it's easier, you can card somebody when they come in your front door, but then it's like now they're in your, it's like, okay, somebody came to your party, well now you gotta watch where they go
Doesn't
the
the
whole
state-
time they're there. It's just, it seems like it's just a bigger risk.
But but Ben I think is alluding to.
I think
It's the state of Illinois that allowed this,
Well,
not
and the state
me.
of Illinois also already, as a gaming license holder, emboldens you to, you're supposed to not allow minors at the machines.
At the
You're supposed to
machines,
observe
that's
them.
part of it,
It's
and
part of
so-
the license, yeah.
Yeah, and on top of that, like I said, you don't have to ever become a 21 and under business. You can always stay 21 and over, even if you added the food element and became a C. Doesn't mean you have to let anybody in there.
Would you just quickly explain the food element and what the percentage of if beer and frozen pizzas added up to
Yeah.
60, would you please explain that real quick?
Right, so we had a percentage
Yeah.
of like how much has to be
Percentage.
from gaming and how much has to be from the other elements of your food. So if your business is, sells alcohol and food, it has to make up, what was 60%?
You can't have any more than 40% of your gross revenue be from video gaming revenue. So we didn't really say food, drink, it's
That was
the
an intent to keep away
40%,
from
yeah.
gaming parlors.
Yeah, that was, so there's people that come in and that's all they do is the gaming parlors. So we kind of, pennies came in, it was like, okay, that was something that was kind of decided before I came on board, and that was a way of kind of holding that line, so we didn't have a pennies and a dotties and a Luann's and everything else, so. Okay.
So Mayor, you are saying that, these establishments can still dictate
Of course.
the age group that they've always been?
Yeah, they've always had that ability.
Yep.
Yeah.
Did you feel that it was gonna change to your establishment? Was that the concern that you had?
No, my concern is, okay, to say for a C license, to say this introduction of food, even though, to me, it's like, we encourage people downtown, it's like, instead of having pizzas in the bar, which, say, classify as food, because I don't know what the percentage of alcohol to food is for a license. I mean, is there standards for that?
No, we didn't have that. We just had like, if you're, it can't be more than X amount from gaming. So if it's not gonna be like if a food element comes in, that we had a rule that says, well, you gotta make, 60% of your revenue has to be food. That's what you see in Chicago, for instance, or other bars or other taverns. It's like they do make that demand. It's not something we did. Again, not trying to be so onerous that we make it impossible to do things. We tried to find a sensible way to make these things happen.
But I think it's getting clouded into a gaming revenue or a gaming licensing versus, it sounds like you wanted to amend liquor licenses, period.
No, I wanted to restrict gaming, and I would have.
But gaming in a restaurant, I thought that's what you wanted to restrict, and now
I
you're
agree.
basically
Like I said, we had a draft that said only A licenses, Donna.
encouraging it.
Yeah.
You're encouraging it by saying that, okay, as an A1 holder, if you're going to sell your establishment, the new owner, going through, making assumptions of
Sure,
going
sure.
through all that they would not be eligible for a gaming license unless they converted and made it serve some kind of food.
Right. And that's just a way of trying to overall look at some of the other issues that come with bars. Like I said, it's where people
Yeah, but
chasing with
that would be an issue with liquor licenses, period. Then you would say, okay, well, we're not gonna have A1 or B2 liquor licenses, we're only gonna issue C2 licenses. So then you would have to have food.
Well, and there hasn't
That should
been a
not
new.
be tied to gaming then.
Right, and there hasn't been a new A license in like 2 decades. I mean, it's just not something that not just this council,
Yeah,
but
but you
previous
can't forget
councils.
about your 2-decade-old A license customers either.
And nothing changes. You can sell it exactly the way you bought it, Donna, or Karen, forgive me. You can do it exactly the same way. Nobody's changing
As a
that.
business owner, when you own a business for a length of time, things appreciate in value, okay? Your business grows. It grows in different ways. All right, now, so gaming is part of, it affects my bottom line.
Yeah, actually, any license, including a liquor license, is only good for a year. It's non-transferable. So if you
No,
did
I
sell your
understand that, but it's-
business,
your business is what
the
you're
new applicant would
selling.
have to come in, and if there's a license available, they would have to apply like for a new license. So that's any business, when you do it, you're selling it with no guarantee that that new buyer's going to get a liquor license or a video gaming license.
It's just the nature of, that's the way, these things are. They're not automatic. They have to go through the
Well, I
gaming
understand
commission,
you
not
have
just
to-
our gaming commission,
You
but
have
the
to be
state gaming
approved, but at
commission.
least you have, is somebody, say, to sell your business, you have your business is your goodwill and your licenses.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah,
get it.
you don't assume that, okay, anybody that wants to say, oh, yeah, well, I want to buy your place. Yeah, you have to make sure that that person is going to be eligible, just like, okay, you could say your home is for sale, and not everybody's going to be able to purchase your home if they don't qualify for a mortgage and et cetera. Same thing holds true for a business. But at least you have, you say, oh, well, on the books, this is what I made, but this is what you can make. You're going to make less.
Unless you want to put a kitchen in. And it sounds like the council's willing to do some kind of help with making that happen. So, trying our best to make it happen.
A lot of my customers, we call local businesses, Manja Pizza, Papa Joe's, whatever's in town, that come down and they, walk down the street and deliver to the people that want to eat. People bring their own food in.
Yeah, it's possible, but it's still not the establishment. So I think having, where we went on this, Karen. So it is what it is. I understand your concerns, your objections. I think the one thing that's come out of this is that I think there's some confirmation that your current places don't have to do any of the screening the others do. They don't have to have, they get the 6 machines. And we've kind of liked the idea of coming up with some direction to help actually add that element in with monetarily. So I think that's a plus coming out of this meeting.
Well, thank you for your time.
Okay. All right, Pat, what do you got? Yep.
My name is Pat Gurney. I own the Outpost Pub and Grill, doing business as Morgan's. I am a C2. Now, I'm reading all of this. Does this mean now I give you my $500, I apply, or under investigations, it says you can send somebody out to check my place out, whatever. I have to move my machines and then close them now, you're telling me?
Yeah,
You're
so
putting
that's
a-
where, yes. So the existing businesses that are C2s, we want to try to find a way to bring them into as close to compliance as we can. If a new person were to come in and do this from scratch, we would tell them, you got to have a separate room with the doors and, so the
No,
machines are completely screened. But with existing businesses, the gaming commissioners will have to go out, look at things case by case, understand what's possible, what's not possible. For instance, some businesses, it's not a big hardship to add that because they have the square footage. Others, it might be very tight. And so we've asked these commissioners to be sensitive to it and try to work with the existing business owners on how to make that happen.
So I would literally have to move my machines. We've got the room to do it. But you're talking about a big financial thing, and all of this says you put 3 days, 10 days, whatever, back and forth. How are we gonna get this before December 31st when the licenses?
No,
The
but you have a year,
Year to come into compliance. So you have actually 6 months to submit a plan that will screen the
Oh, okay.
machines.
Yeah, that
You
gives
don't
you
necessarily have to put in a different room, it's just as long as the machines are covered from public view and the commission approves that plan. And then you have until next license, until end of 2020 to put all that into, actual construction. It's my understanding the actual, your supplier, your video gaming suppliers, they're more than willing to actually do some of the construction.
They'll only pay for part of it. The
Yeah,
state only allows them to pay a certain portion.
On the license fee, but it's my understanding.
Anything they give
yeah.
you, anything they give you, even your liquor distributors now, where the beer guys used to give you cups and stuff. No, you have to pay for them
Yeah.
all now.
Well,
The state doesn't,
I was
state doesn't give
talking-
you
yeah.
anything.
Okay, yeah. But at least there'll be a sharing of the cost, because I'm sure the supplier will want you to keep your machines.
Oh, I'm sure they do too.
So they will do a lot to keep those machines in
Okay,
there.
all right, I didn't understand the time element, because I was like, how am I gonna do all this by January? Because I am C2.
Yeah, you just have to submit your application, and then within 6 months, submit your
I
site
mean, in the
plan.
health department, they're in
They're-
by us every 3 months anyway.
Well, the inspection doesn't require a health
okay,
inspection
okay.
on that. You already have health license through your liquor license.
Yes, okay. Now, just one more question. When you talked about grants,
I can clarify that.
my building, because I'm not downtown, I don't fall into that. It says only downtown, 9th Street or something to that.
That's for facade grants. Those are outside grants, yeah.
Okay.
The council could make an accommodation with their discretion to pretty much anywhere. If you wanted to.
Yeah, and again, just to clarify too.
I
it's
mean,
like-
because I pay the same like everything, but I'm not. I'm out there in Nowhereville.
Yeah, sure, get it. But I want to clarify one point. I mean, with the commission, Sonny said, like, you guys have to screen them out of sight. It will be the commission working with the individual existing business owners to do the best that can be done, so.
And one thing I wanted to tell you, the vendors all have cameras. on the machines at any given time. Maybe Lockport could put into these vendors, if you guys want to see them at any given time, you're going to know there's no children anywhere. We can't, we have a bar too. Those kids aren't allowed 18 inches from that bar. If they come in to eat, they sit at a table away from there. They don't go up to the bar. They don't go near the machines. I mean, it's a state. We can get fined $10,000 if there's a child near the machines by the state.
Yep, sure. No, that's the way it works, whether it's the public landing restaurant or,
Right,
who have bars
exactly.
also, so.
Okay, that's all. Thank
All
you.
right, sure, thank you. All right, Stella, what do you got? Oh, okay. All right, come on, Jackie, please.
So I'm Jackie Hennessy from Jackie's Pub in Lockport. I'm actually, 100% with Karen. It doesn't make sense to me. But, the hammer guy was never served in my place, just so you know. Just so happened to say Jackie's Pub, but he was never served there. But, okay. So, I'm just curious because, like, say, what if like, Pops comes in because they're a C2 license? What if they come in and they say, oh, well, now maybe we want to have games? See, I don't think that's a good idea either. I feel like the same with Karen, that I don't think young kids should be around gaming. I feel like that's what the whole kit and caboodle of gaming was, that you've got to be 21 or older to be even to go to a casino or anywhere else. So
Sure.
I just feel like, I feel like that was the wrong way to do it. And maybe you guys could reconsider, all of this that you have done. I'm just saying maybe reconsider. That's all I'm asking, because it is a big deal when it comes down to numbers when you're trying to sell your business, because they feel like that, the numbers that you're making off of these games and stuff, that they're not gonna be able to make that kind of money either. And I get what you're saying too about this is handed in your lap, but it's handed in everybody else's lap also. So, and we work very hard, just the same as everybody else in the downtown area. So that's all. I just wanted to just say that end of it, though.
Okay, all right, thank you, Jackie.
Thank you.
All right, everyone, I do appreciate you guys coming out here and sharing your thoughts. And like I said, I think one positive is this idea of helping with, these build-outs, I think, for, with the kitchen idea. So we'll continue to explore that. And again, it's.
One more thing, I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure.
But I did take an 8-hour class too, because we sell frozen pizzas, and the health department comes in 3 times a year now because of it.
Yeah.
So I do offer food for the people that come in there, and I do offer snacks for everybody that comes in there also, so.
Sure.
I do offer some sort of food, I just wanted you to.
Okay. All right, well, thank you.
No
Okay.
I also think that it would be in the best interest.
Well, actually, our C2 is slightly more restrictive. It does require like a range hood, and that was the way we tried. That was when we made that change, it was because, the Dottie's and the Luann's, the strictly gaming parlors, were like, oh, we have food, but it was really, sandwiches from Costco. And so we said, well, okay, if you're going to actually be a restaurant, you need to have a range hood. So it makes it a little more committed. So it's more than just the frozen pizzas, but. Yeah, and that was an interesting thing, and that's why, again, like I said, when we try to come up with rules after 6 years of gaming, it's complicated. But one of the reasons Rocco they have a C2 license, but that was only because when they annexed in, we had never given an A license in decades. So we're like, well, you guys can have a C2, even though we understand you're not a restaurant. But that was the only licenses we had available, so that's why we did it. So again, it is messy in that, and the Gaming Commission will end up having to deal, and albeit sensitively, it's like as we instructed with Rocco's and how we move forward with them.
And after a year of this, they may come back with a recommendation to make some tweaks and changes, so that'd be fine too.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, the only thing I was thinking about is like we were talking about 5 establishments right now, 5 liquor licenses to be included in the gaming without having to convert to a C2 license.
Yeah, no,
That's it versus the other spectrum of, like you said, everybody
You know, I totally understand where you're coming from, Karen, and what you're asking. It's like, hey, A should be in there. But from my perspective is helping make these places, again, this is where all my calls come from, is the bars with people being overly intoxicated. It was a way to encourage that without demanding it. And so that's what it's been about.
There's other options out there, but, you know, if you have a nuisance place, I know there's fines for things like that.
Sure.
I guess I don't know.
Okay. All right. Anything else, folks?
Can I revisit PW4? I got a text that, that roundabout was $2 million, and it was 80/20, federal and
Within
local.
80/20 possible?
80/20, and so it cost $400,000 to the local jurisdiction.
Okay.
Can we make it consent?
That was in Orland.
Yeah.
And that was not to the truck standards that we're gonna be
Oh,
looking for, so.
May not be a little low.
So I, add
Better
50
leave it action then. We
Add
don't know what's gonna
50% to that.
Yeah, 50%. Yeah, just make that happen.
And happy anniversary, Joanne.
Oh,
Oh, that's some new business.
48 years?
what?
Did you see that picture of them when they were young? Yeah. You look like a total handful, man. I said, she looks like, yeah, the Italian, yeah, man, it was like, my goodness.
No, I have to thank my husband for not minding me being here tonight.
Sorry, and I'm sorry. All right, so, yeah, we still got another little thing. All right, so let's do, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn committee of the whole. Okay, Larry, seconded by Mark, was it? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, do you guys need 5?
I need 2 minutes,
Okay.
please.
roll call, please.
You got it. All right, Saban. Present. Schreiber.
Still here.
Bergbauer.
Present.
Galogly.
Here.
Deskin.
Here, here, here. Here, here, here.
Bredesen.
Here.
Beretta.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, my friends, looking for a motion to have a consent agenda tonight.
So moved.
Okay, looks like Joanne and Mark, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, so tonight's consent agenda. So we have Committee of the Whole meeting minutes from October 16th, the regular City Council meetings from October 16th. We have our payroll period ending October 20th. I've had a request to pull the bills, so I'm going to pull FN2, and we'll do that as an action item. And then what we'll still have is CA1, which is amendment to the Lockport Municipal Code pertaining to raffles, and then AT2, which is the ordinance for fines, penalty, code violations. So looking for a motion to approve said consent agenda.
Second.
All right, so it's Renee with JR. May I have a roll call, please?
Jerp. Saban. Yes. Schreiber.
Yes.
Bergbauer.
Yes.
Galogly.
Yes.
Deskin.
Yes.
Lobes.
Yes.
Bredesen.
Yes.
Beretta.
Yes.
Motion passed.
All right, so now I'm looking to have a motion to pass our bills through October 29th.
Can I have a discussion on it?
Yeah, we just need to do the
I'll make a
formalities. Motion,
Second.
seconded by Joanne. Okay, you're, go ahead, Catherine.
I just had two concerns on this one. The first one was that on August 21st, we approved up to $50,000 for parkway trees. And so my question was, why are we ordering only 28,875 worth of trees instead of spending the whole 50,000 that we had approved up to that? And so I guess I might ask Lisa earlier, and she said we'd have to defer to Public Works to find out why.
Sure. Yeah, we approved up to that. We have successfully cleared out the entire list for the city of the trees that were at Public Works. So every person who was on the list for a tree in Public Works has now been taken care of, and the city has, we did a catch-up last year, and we were able to accomplish what we set out to do, which was to clear out the list. So the entire 50,000 was not needed, so the 28,000 closed it out.
Are you telling me that you feel that everybody who's supposed to get a tree has a tree now?
Everybody who called in, everybody who has requested a
They
tree,
have to call in to get it.
everybody who is on the list. We had several hundred on the list last year.
Okay.
We had a big catch-up last year, and we were able to accomplish that this year. I think about 109 trees.
All right, so from what I understand is maybe there's some confusion by residents that didn't realize they had to call in for their tree.
That's the problem I
Okay.
have.
I assumed that
It's just gonna happen.
It was
If
gonna
you cut it
happen.
down, you were gonna replace it. So I think that's where some of this confusion is.
Also, if you've sold your house since we removed it and there's a new homeowner, that homeowner might not even realize that that's why it's not there too.
Yeah.
I mean, just because, it was there with the previous person, this is going on over so many years. Turnover happens in houses too. I just want to see these missing trees go back into place. And so I do know that there's a lot of people who said they've done this. Maybe they believe they've put their name on a list, and maybe it's not on a list. So I'll see when the next tree, when the trees haven't gone in yet, have they?
Yes,
They have gone in.
yes.
Well, then I know my neighbor across the street has requested trees, and she's waiting for the tree fairy to show up. And
Give us
so,
the name and address. I mean,
so I mean, I know she's requested this, so.
if there's
I-
a certain location that you need or want, give us the name and address. We'll look it up.
But I hear this every time.
Every year, we talk about this every year, and we ask people to put on the
Well,
list.
so I had asked for what the list was, and when I had called her, like, you can't have the list. So I was like, where's the list of the names? So now the list is at 0 names, correct?
That is
So
correct.
anybody who did not get a tree literally has to call in and request
Nobody
it.
didn't, I guess, I just want to be clear, nobody did not get a tree. The people, everybody, and this was done well before I got here. The decisions were made how to remove the trees. The trees were put in by developers, paid for by developers. The trees that were in public right-of-way were removed at the city's sole expense, and the statement that was made for the tree replacement was in order to put trees back, individual residents had to call to be put back on the list. I know it's may be hard to believe, but there are plenty of people who don't want trees
And that
put
is
back.
correct, because I did get some people.
And so, so there's as many people that have, that don't want a tree back that maybe do. So, again, this was all done well before I got here, so all that I did when I got here was see a long list of people that wanted trees. And so I accomplished what I set out, and I think the Public Works Department set out to do, which
Some
was
people want to
clear
put
that
their own
list
trees
out.
in, they want a different species or whatever. I mean, that's, a lot of people just put their own trees in the parkways, so if they
Well-
want one, they just need to call one, call it in.
So I guess my suggestion is, clearly there's a couple people that you know personally, let them know, and I'm sure we'll be able to take care of it.
They will, yeah, call Public Works, and the list will start over I mean, we requested budget money again next year, so all we have to do is just start the list, you know, from today. And we do put out, I know in the newsletters that, that the tree program is starting again. Call Public
Facebook,
Works.
website, newsletter.
Right, call Public Works.
So then the next question is, if they don't need to have a tree replaced, are we okay with not having parkway trees? Because that could be the ultimate thing that you see then, is no parkway trees. I mean, is it a requirement then? Because
HOAs might decide, developers might decide, individual homeowners.
Right, so are we okay with that? So the existing homes, is it okay if after their trees die, we never replace trees? Is that what we want?
The owner doesn't want it
Right,
replaced.
right, but I'm saying, is that okay if they just sit vacant then and there's no trees there? Is that what we
That's
want
their
as a
right.
council?
I'll tell you what, Catherine, why don't we do this? Why don't we, go ahead and...
asking.
Yeah, that's good. Why don't we just go ahead and do this vote, and then having the tree discussion, I think, is fine. Let's do it in the proper place. We can do it under new business. But let's take care of these bill votes.
I do have one more on the bills. So I asked Lisa who was JSD Professional Services. That was $10,800 for the bike path process billing. And then there was, what we had approved in 2018 on August 15 was for Greenberg Farrell for the 2003 Master Bike Plan not to exceed $48,000. And so I want to know why we approved a bill for Greenberg Farrell, but then we paid JSD Professionals.
Sure. We brought that up at council on September 18th, 2019, and we talked about Greenberg Farrell being originally contracted, and they had several personnels migrate to JSD Professional Services, so we did talk about that at council. And we didn't change the scope of work. We didn't change the cost. Matter of fact, we even probably saved some money. We've made 4 or 5 payments to JSD this year so far. This is probably the last payment we'll be making, and we're closing it out short of the $50,000.
But shouldn't the contract have been rewritten then for JSD Professionals, or we should have seen a new contract come through?
Well, we discussed
mean-
it at council and pretty much had the verbal to continue. Like, engineering firms have changed staff, and I know the mayor had mentioned that. It happens in his industry all the time. We brought it up and talked about it in September.
Is that normal procedure, Sonny?
I think it's an unusual
Yeah,
circumstance.
it is unusual circumstances because the personnel who worked in the original professional contractor knew all the background, did all the background, and in order for us to keep her, she ended up at a newer, newer company. So in order to keep that background and everything that she had, and the other issue was that whether or not we would be able to keep the preliminary report that she had already. If we kept the old company, we would not have been able to do that. So there's some issues regarding that. It's not normal. I think in hindsight, maybe we could have formalized, the contract with the new people, but I think because it was such a weird way, we also had a release from the other previous company on that we could use that information. So there's a lot of things that were a little bit unusual, but again, the scope of work didn't change, the parameters didn't change, the actual amount didn't change. It just, we wanted to make sure that we
were just
followed the
following the
person. Yeah,
contractor,
yeah.
who was doing the work. And like Ben said, because I'm like, I know we talked about this, so Ben looked up the date, so it was something we all discussed, so I think,
If you discussed it in September, when were we paying the other company? We should have had it discussed
We
before.
stopped paying them in, I don't know, March or May.
So it really wasn't discussed then prior to that? Or
Well,
was it?
it's-
If I look
It's
back,
been discussed multiple times. I can send you the dates and the times, but, you know,
I just
had
feel
you
like, you
called
know-
me and we had this discussion, I could have been able to get more information for you, but apparently you called everybody but me.
well, I contacted Lisa on it, so that's what I wanted to know on that specific
Happy to
amount.
answer your questions anytime if you want to give me a call.
All right, so why don't we, why don't we do a roll call on the bills?
The FN2. All right, Saban.
Yes.
Schreiber.
Yes.
Bergbauer.
Yes.
Galogly.
I abstain because the city of Lockport is paying my employer.
Okay, Deskin.
Yes.
Loeb.
Yes.
Bartleson.
Yes.
Beretta.
No?
Motion passed.
Okay, so, moving on, we've got, regular business action items. CA1, the change order for partial demolition of the Sloan Building.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So the change order, the Sloan Building, if you've driven by in a while, has obviously looks a lot different. It's pretty much down. We did run into a couple of unforeseens. We ran into an asbestos wall that was on an interior wall that no one knew was there. I did approve a quick change order for about $6,000 to get that taken care of. Since then, the rest of the building has been coming down fine. What we realized at the end of the day, once it's down, we're gonna need a little bit more architectural work to help do some drawings to form up some of the base walls and the foundation and bring in some cement and try to float it out and make it as flat as possible. We weren't sure how, once the building was all down, how flat the overall space was gonna be. So I've requested an additional $50,000. I've got some estimates from the contractor for about $24,000. I've got a $10,000 estimate from the architect firm. I did pad the request for maybe another $10,000, not to exceed 50 total, so that we had some ability to finish the project before the season ends. So basically, we're asking to make the change order from the original 249 up to 50,000 more. We would stop at 299,883. That 50,000 does include the 6 that I already spent.
Okay.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
JR, Darren, can we do any discussion? All right, can we do a roll call, please?
Got it. Saban. Yes. Schreiber.
Yes.
Bergbauer.
Yes.
Galogly.
Yes.
Deskin.
Yes.
Loebs.
Yes.
Bartleson.
Yes.
Beretta. Yes. Motion passed.
All right, looking for a motion to approve Resolution 19-111-9, which is authorizing the disposal of surplus items.
So moved.
Darren? Was it Larry? Okay. Any discussion, concerns about this one? Okay, can I do a roll call, please?
Saban. Yes. Schreiber.
Yes.
Bergbauer.
Yes.
Galogly.
Yes.
Deskin.
Yes.
Loebs.
Yes.
Bartleson.
Yes.
Beretta.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Okay, and then PW1, looking for a motion to approve for disposal of street department vehicles and equipment.
I'll make that motion.
JR,
Second.
seconded by Joanne. Any thoughts, questions?
Just real quickly, it's 17, not 71,000 on the tractor for expenses.
Okay.
The
Okay.
numbers were inversed in the description.
All right, anything else? All right, why don't we do a roll call?
Saban. Yes. Schreiber.
Yes.
Bergbauer.
Yes.
Galogly.
Yes.
Deskin.
Yes.
Loebs.
Yes.
Bartleson.
Yes.
Beretta.
Yes.
Motion passed.
All right, last thing, gotta do a public hearing, PH1 for the budget. So, here it comes. This public hearing is being held pursuant to Illinois law to hear discussion and public comment on the proposed budget for the coming fiscal year, which has been on display for the requisite length of time. I ask that Lisa Heglin review the highlights of the budget.
Thank you. Just real quick, we had total revenue of 44 million.
Are we supposed to have
You have to have a motion to,
Motion to
do you
open.
want to do it after she presents, or?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't, usually I just
to
follow
you.
my script here. Do we need to do a motion somewhere, Sonny? Where-
Yes, motion to open up the public hearing.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Okay,
Motion by Galogly, second by Deskin.
yep, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, sorry, thank you, Darren.
Okay. and expenses of 59 million. What I did want to point out to you is what I included in your packet was a revised budget from what you had originally seen when we presented a few weeks ago. And this is to incorporate the 2 requests that Brent made for the STP engineering, okay? So the $340,000 that we were seeking approval on, I wanted to make sure that got included in the budget because we had not talked about that previously. So the figures here going forward are going to reflect that, and you'll see I added a new column there on that spreadsheet to identify that we made a change. So other than that, it's the same budget that was presented. We're using excess reserves or the bond proceeds of 14 million. From an operating perspective, the entire budget is balanced. Okay, so that's the highlight I wanted to give, and if there's any questions from anyone?
Okay.
Public?
Yep, this is your opportunity, Roy.
No public.
Anyone in the audience have any questions?
Is your change the
Wait,
darker gray?
we need
Is
to
that the
close
adjusted,
public
the 2020 adjusted budget?
Close the public.
I'm sorry. My
I'll make the
script, I have a bad
I'll
script.
make the motion. I make the motion to close the public hearing.
Okay.
Second.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Who seconded?
Okay, now,
Who seconded?
I did.
Thank you, Renee.
whoever had a question.
Well, I was, you had just said, is that the darker gray? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, the
Okay.
adjusted budget includes now the $340,000 that Brent is seeking for the STP engineering.
There you go.
Okay. Anything else?
Nope, that's all I had.
All right.
I have one quick thing under new business that I failed to go ahead and ask during the committee hall. I know there's some things
No,
going on with
it's
the.
just for the public hearing. I'm sorry.
Okay, so I know that there's, we've had some, discussions about, water services out in Lockport Heights, and I was wondering if you could give us an update?
Yes. So we have the Lockport Heights Sanitary District has, they've put together a program through the CDBG grants through the county to replace some water main. As part of that project, they put together the plans and have gone out to bid. And with that, they've elected to utilize plastic pipe for their water main, and then in order to extend the CDBG grant as far as possible, utilize plastic pipe for the services as well. The city did ask for what the upcharge would be to put that in. All is ductile and copper. The alternatives were not available for the actual pipe, but they did provide alternative prices for the services. So we have 2 options. One option would be to replace, instead of utilizing the plastic pipe, the city would pay the price of copper from the pipe, from the main to the house, in the amount of $100,000. From the main to just the B-box, which is the public-owned portion of the service, that would be $50,000, just under $50,000. So we did request that, those costs, and wanted to bring those to council for consideration, whether or not that was something that council would entertain, putting in money for the Lockport Heights, project to put it in.
Is plastic pipe code? Can they do that?
Plastic pipe is not city code, so the city code does not allow plastic water main pipe or plastic service pipe, so, no.
So if any funding money is gonna be used by the city of Lockport, they cannot use plastic.
Well, we could certainly make that.
And that's kind of, that's why we wanted to bring this, is because our code does not allow, and specs do not allow for plastic pipe. And so one of the things that we talked about was potentially paying for that upcharge. But again, wanted to bring that to
But why is the
council.
upcharge needed, I guess? Because they want to take the
consideration.
CDBG, and maybe Roy, come to the mic if you don't mind. They're trying to do, so they were gonna do 100 homes, and now they're gonna be able to do 150 homes because they're using substandard materials, or not to code anyway, whatever you wanna call it. And then we're being asked to pay the
Well,
additional money
I
to achieve
mean,
these additional ones, right?
I asked,
Also just do less homes but follow code and then just keep doing more CDBG grants? I mean, or is that,
after the plans were out, we
Okay.
requested, I did not know that the services were going to be plastic, no.
Well, technically, it's not gonna be it's called HDP, and the difference between HDP, you're running about 260 pounds, and yes, it is code for throughout Will County.
It is not code
Not in the city of
for the
Lockport.
city of Lockport.
City of Lockport, but Will County does allow it, and it was approved by Will County. So we are following Will County, since we are not part of Lockport. So we are in.
on Lockport's system, right?
So this becomes the
we're
problem,
not-
is for us to
we're-
maintain it, it does not meet our code for us to
For
maintain.
you guys, but we have to do our own capital improvements per the IGA, so.
Are we able to charge extra if we have to replace more plastic pipe because it fails more often, or is there
It's
ways?
actually, when you look at it, like I said, copper has 160 pounds, HDP has a 260-pound breaking point. And it's actually, when we ran the sewer, water main problem to the project across Archer, the state actually required us to run that HDP. So that's how much better product that is. Now, in the past, we had to run all copper. It wasn't until about 2 years ago that Will County changed their opinion on it and started allowing us to run this HDP because they know we can finish this. And we could change that, but then that's going to allow us, with us doing this project now, which right now is gonna come in close to about $1.5 million we're putting into this project. That's gonna allow us to take and everything from 136 down to Smith Road, all 4 blocks. We'll be able to complete this project.
So it's only
then be able
10%?
to-
So it's only 10% to go up to copper then? If it's a $1 million project and you only need
It's a
$100,000 more?
$100,000 difference in this. But what that's gonna do is that allows us to take all the service lines that's over there, finish up this area, and then we can abandon all the 4-inch lines, which is what the city's been asking us, because right now you guys are maintaining 2 water lines. If we do this and say, well, we're gonna do this, we won't be able to finish up all the service lines, and then you guys will be on the hook for maintaining 2 more water lines for
The lesser of two
indefinitely.
evils, right? Is that what you're saying?
Pardon?
It's the lesser of two evils?
Correct.
I don't know.
We
The
gave
challenge that I
the
have-
drawings to the city, you guys have had the drawing, but that's here nor there. We're not trying to play blame on anybody here. We're trying to do this. The county looks at it as, hey, this is a much better product. They're starting to use it throughout the county.
I think the question is,
You
do
get
we
more
want
money,
to,
you get more service for your money.
the question is, do we want to accept those utilities in 2032 when the agreement ends and it's not, doesn't meet our code and it starts to deteriorate and it's not worth what it was?
I don't have,
Well, we
I
don't
don't
know
have
what's
the
gonna happen.
equipment, the materials,
It's
the
gonna-
expertise in-house right now to address plastic pipe.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same reason that we have specs.
It's
and
costs.
My job is to make sure we're efficient in the middle of the night when we have to go out and make a repair.
So let me help a little bit here, because my eyes usually glaze over when we talk about this stuff.
Right.
But just so,
Don't feel
and
bad.
so
Mine
for,
does too. I get lost with our
for
engineer.
people like, Larry, Mark, maybe if no, understanding what's happening. So just quickly, clarification is that while Lockport Heights is a separate sanitary district, we have this little bit of a relationship that's, kind of unusual. One of the things, though, ultimately is, though, there is going to be, you just mentioned the date, 20 what?
I don't know if it's 2030 or
30.
2030.
Ultimately,
Like another 10, 15 years from now.
ultimately, we have an agreement to take over Lockport Heights. So one day, it'll all be City of Lockport,
No,
right?
that's not true.
No,
No?
but
Just,
The agreement's off.
the agreement's over and we get to renegotiate.
Oh, I
Nothing says
see.
that
So we
anybody-
can do what we want. But if it ends up being like, hey, it should just be the City of Lockport's water system now,
Yeah.
that's a possibility. Or, this Lockport Heights says, we want to keep our own. But tell me just quickly the relationship we have right now. Like, why do we care at all? And what obligations do we have
Yeah.
at the moment?
Our obligation is to maintain all of the infrastructure that is out there. So our obligation is to, and we treat it just like it's any other main in the city of Lockport. If there is a break, we go out and repair it. If there is any sort of damage or issue, we go out and fix it. My concern is that we enforce for all of our developments and we enforce for all of our work the codes and specs that the council has brought forth, which are ductile pipe and copper services. That is what we work on, that is what the guys work on. The guys do not work on plastic pipe, the guys do not work on plastic services. Now, up in Lockport Heights, there is other plastic water pipe, water main, but the plastic services, the HDPE services, those would be completely new. And again, the guys, that's something that that's something that the department does not currently have any training in.
So ultimately, it's making it more complicated for us.
Right.
The
All
debate
all the
is,
fittings that you,
if we're required to maintain it, shouldn't they be required to build it to our spec? That's the debate.
well, if that was the case, but we also did bring back, before we went out for bid, it was brought to Brent Stitch back then, we brought it up about going with ductile iron. Because it is part of the city code to have ductile iron, and at that time,
It's 10%.
We asked you for the price for that, and you never.
and we did bring it back.
And you never,
Paul said he gave it to you guys, and it was close to over $250,000 difference on that, and
exactly, and this, Roy, this is our challenge, is we enforce our code and we enforce it for everybody except for you guys. And so I don't, it's difficult when I'm expected to maintain everything and treat everybody the same, because I'm told always that I don't treat Lockport Heights the same, and the city of Lockport doesn't treat them the same.
Well,
And
all
those
I
words
can-
come out of your mouth, and that is not the case. We go over and above and on top.
I get
and
told from our engineer that we were told that the city did not want to go with that extra expense. So we went back according to our engineer.
If a developer came in and said, I want to put an HDPE pipe, I would tell that developer, you are not installing that product in the city of Lockport. We are not going to accept
I
that.
understand.
And that is the same thing we are telling you, and we will not accept plastic pipe.
So can you do 10% less of the project and do the proper materials? If it was a $100,000 ask on $1 million, just do 10% less work and do it right.
If the city wants to go that route, I can take it back to the board, but then how long does the city want to keep maintaining 2 water mains?
No.
You've got several leaks out there
And our
now.
code does not, and our agreement does not dictate that we have to take care of parallel main.
So I think we're trying to work together to get it resolved as soon as possible, but I think what you're hearing is we really don't want to use subgrade materials in order to accelerate that completion. We definitely want to get off the two mains, but let's continue to work with the CDBG funds and everything we can to get it going as soon as possible, but we prefer to use the proper materials.
Well, and I would
City
agree with
code.
staff. I mean, because if we have to maintain materials that we're not used to, and, JR made comments about we have to stock certain things that are not in our wheelhouse, I will defer to staff's opinion on this, and that would be my opinion. It's like, if you guys want to keep it to code, keep it to code. And, if Lockport Heights has to do a little bit less, I think ultimately, in the end, we'll come up with a system that meets our code, so. that-
According to our engineer also, the 1-inch fittings that they use is the same 1-inch fitting you use on copper or HDP. So when you go out there to make your repair, it's the same fitting, the same style repair you're gonna do.
Okay.
There's no difference in fittings. You don't have to buy separate fittings. It's the same 1-inch fitting.
It sounds like there is some expertise involved, though, in working on that other kind of.
It's a different type of pipe. I mean, it's a different type of pipe that we do not have in our code.
Okay.
So we do not have that currently allowed in the city of Lockport.
Okay. Well, what do you guys want? I mean, obviously, we're just talking about this as a new business thing.
It's a new, and I get it, but we held I was told, previously it was gonna be on it, which is okay, but we were holding a special meeting tomorrow.
I think we can give you
have to
direction
move
here.
forward.
I mean, what's the direction? You guys want to keep to our city code?
Okay.
Okay, so that's the consensus, whether,
You wanna stick to city code, okay.
okay.
But again, it is still part of in the IGA that we have to do our own capital improvements, so.
And it's in the same agreement that we have to maintain that, so
Right.
we'd appreciate it if you would stick with our materials, and we understand it may slow down the overall improvements, but at least it'd be done right for the long term.
So did you want ductile iron too then?
I defer to Brent.
And ductile is what our code is.
So my question is, for this council, I mean, Because now we're gonna have to go back to the CDBG that we just fought 6 months for.
It's quite simple. What is city code? That's what we want. If ductile iron is city code, that's what we're gonna get. Simple.
All right, agreed. Okay. Any other new business? All right, looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Yes, let's go.
Looks like Darren and Mark, was it? Okay.
Thought it was Galogly.
Sorry.
Joanne, I heard
Did I
Joanne.
sound like?
Oh my gosh.
Can you repeat that, please? Who motioned?
Joanne.
Joanne motioned, who seconded?
No, I seconded Mark
Mark motioned. That was
Thank
my
you.
motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
For the public